Chapter 1551–1576 Supremacy Games 1551 Becoming a Bioresearcher. At the moment, Felix was at the 9th Dragon Mark and the 13th Devourer's Mark. This meant the Dragon Marks enhanced his strength by 180k, while the Devourer's Marks helped him obtain 130k. Devourer Marks are peaked at 30 marks while Dragons are infinite. Lady Sphinx remarked, though, the resources required to fulfill each mark keep doubling and I don't think absorbing them like before is efficient. I know, I am losing a decent chunk of elemental energy since my hearts aren't optimal 100%. Felix understood that his previous method of absorbing natural treasures and elemental minerals would no longer work in upper marks if he didn't find a way to perfect the process. Losing 20% or 30% of resources during each absorption was a bit okay before, but in his current state, those percentages translated to thousands of rare treasures wasted. Master, is there a potion or divine item that can help with this problem? Felix inquired with a serious tone. For divine items, you should check with Cyclope. Lady Sphinx answered, as for the potions, it's a bit tough to say. What do you mean? Rank 6 potions are the potions capable of affecting primogenitors either positively or negatively. However, I have made only a dozen recipes of them since they are extremely challenging to create. Lady Sphinx clarified, not a single one is related to enhancing elemental energy absorption from natural treasures. Felix always heard about rank 6 potions and never learned how to concoct one. Time wasn't his ally and he was always giving his attention to other fields, which would help him receive an instant strength enhancement. So, his potion making had been stagnated for a long while now. I think it's time to learn how to create my recipes. Felix remarked, if there isn't any, I just need to create it. I love the enthusiasm, but it's not going to be easy. Lady Sphinx warned, you can't be half-hearted with this. You will spend decades if not more, experimenting and trialing unique combinations for the sake of creating the perfect recipe. In addition, rank 6 potions require only SSS and natural treasures and materials, which are almost impossible to locate through effort. Most of the ones found were through sheer luck. Since you will be creating a new recipe, this means you will need to find new undiscovered SSS and natural treasures to experiment on. I have already tried every possible combination with the discovered ones, and they gave birth to the recipes in my possession. This does sound a bit too difficult and heavily reliant on fortune. Felix frowned. Felix had no problems with working hard, but to find new undiscovered SSS and natural treasures? That's something unrelated to hard work or effort. The only new undiscovered SSS and natural treasure he managed to find was the dark moss in the ancestral dragon dimension, and it happened purely through chance. Not willing to give up so easily, Felix wondered, is it possible to minimize the luck factor through heavy studying and using the analytic powers of my wisdom eye? In his eyes, he believed that it was possible to predict the existence of the super-rare natural treasures and materials if he managed to study geography, history, weather, biology, evolution, and previous data of discovered SSS and treasures, whether extinct or not. It's not guaranteed to work, but I believe it might help you minimize the luck factor by a small percentage. Lady Sphinx nodded. Even though the SSS and natural treasures seemed heavily reliant on luck, they just didn't pop off randomly across the universe. Many strict conditions needed to be fulfilled for their birth and cultivation. Felix believed that if he managed to find those conditions, it would help him predict a natural treasure's birth without knowing about it beforehand. Though, even if he pulled this off, and there was a natural treasure at the end of his calculations, nothing guaranteed it would be a super rare one. Many low-graded natural treasures were also born under strict conditions. Wait, I have illusion domain. I don't need to go out and search for natural treasures after reading data. Felix exclaimed, with wisdom eye and enough data, I can cultivate my natural treasures in an illusionary garden and see if there is any area in the universe where their birth checks out. That's quite smart. Candace praised. In another sense, Felix would be playing the role of bioresearcher in his illusion domain, crossbreeding plants, accelerating time, feeding them with different types of elemental energy, and the list goes on. Later on, if an SSS and natural treasure was born in his illusion domain, he would already have the conditions and he would just need to search for a location that matched them. This way, he was guaranteed to at least not end up finding lower grade natural treasures. You could do this in the UVR too. Lord Loki shared lazily, I can remove the time restrictions in your private room. It's cool, I prefer using my illusion domain, it gives me more freedom and knowledge about everything in it. Felix rejected the offer politely. Even with the time manipulation restriction taken off, the UVR had many other limitations and Felix was more comfortable with his domain. Plus, since he would be using his domain in his private room, he wouldn't be wasting any elemental energy in the process. As you wish. Without wasting time, Felix entered his private room and embarked on a grand endeavor to create a vast and diverse garden that would serve as a hub for cultivating and researching new plant life. With a wave of his hand, he brought forth a series of distinct environments, each carefully tailored to support unique ecosystems. The first environment he conjured was a sprawling desert, with towering dunes and a scorching sun overhead. In this arid landscape, he nurtured cacti species, succulent species, and many other resilient desert flora that thrived in the harshest conditions. Moving on, Felix shifted the scene to a volcanic terrain, where smoldering lava flows and geysers of steam created a harsh and volatile setting. Amidst the rocky outcrops, he wanted to cultivate rare heat-resistant plants that drew their sustenance from the Earth's fiery depths. Transitioning to a lush forest environment, he created a green canopy of towering trees that filtered sunlight onto a rich undergrowth of ferns, mosses, and vibrant wildflowers. Here, he focused on the cultivation of shade-loving and woodland species. Next, he transported himself to an oceanic paradise, with crystal clear waters, vibrant coral reefs, and swaying kelp forests. He wanted to experiment with marine plant life, nurturing species adapted to various depths and conditions. Felix continued to craft diverse habitats within his garden, including alpine meadows, subterranean caves, and even a celestial grove bathed in moonlight. Each environment was meticulously designed to mimic the conditions of its real-world counterpart. Those environments will do for now. I will add complicated ones later on related to time, void, vibration, death, life, gravity, and such. As he wandered through this botanical wonderland, Felix understood that he had to start easy and simple. Those environments mostly give birth to S-graded natural treasures and below. The SSS and usually were related to rare elements, which was one of the reasons it was nearly impossible to find them in the first place. But he was still a beginner at this and it was best to level up his experience and knowledge gradually. Fortunately, he had a biology Excel at behind him. Since we are doing this, I might as well teach you genetic manipulation to become a true alchemist at last. Lady Sphinx informed while entering his garden. I will be honored. Felix smiled joyfully. He always wanted to excel at the genetic manipulation field and other fields of alchemy, but Lady Sphinx insisted that he needed to master potion making first. With his current tools and available free time, there was no better period to excel at all aspects and transform into an alchemist. 1552 The endless possibilities of crossbreeding. Since your knowledge about natural treasures and materials is already great, we will start with crossbreeding. Lady Sphinx informed. Usually, one would need to learn about plants and such before going into complex details, but Felix's knowledge was already at its peak. He had studied and memorized all books handed to him by Lady Sphinx to assist with his potion making. Of course, those books were merely concentrated on natural treasures and their details, like grade, history, evolutionary tree, etc. So, he was still quite ignorant about crossbreeding and other fields of botany. Without wasting time, she began her explanation, by selecting two particularly unique plants for their lesson. Now, let's use these two remarkable plants. Lady Sphinx gestured to a tall, slender flower with glossy, silver petals, which she called the lunar silk flower, and a low-lying bush with fiery red blossoms, known as the phoenix fire bloom. These two are both degraded natural treasures in their own right, she explained. But imagine if we could combine their qualities into a single plant. How is that possible? Felix's interest was piqued. He was always fascinated by the biology of natural treasures with all the readings he had done on them. Obviously, he was referring mostly to plant-based natural treasures. In this universe, anything could become a natural treasure as long as it held within it a decent amount of elemental energy. For example, if a strong creature died and his corpse wasn't decomposed, standing strong against the power of time, it would start to absorb elemental energy slowly corresponding to the corpse's highest elemental affinity. After centuries, millennials, or even millions of years, what remained of the corpse would be considered a natural treasure. Its grade would be decided by the amount of elemental energy it held within it and its unique effects. However, since those treasures were related to previous existing creatures of the past, Felix wasn't planning to focus on them in his studies. After all, there was no way to figure out the SSS and flesh-based natural treasures' location with his current method. Crossbreeding is the process of mating two different plants with desirable traits to create a new hybrid species. In this case, we aim to merge the lunar silk flower's hardiness and its ability to thrive in tough conditions with the phoenix firebloom's fire-resistant capabilities. Lady Sphinx carefully plucked a blossom from the phoenix firebloom and gathered some of its pollen on a brush. Moving to the lunar silk flower, she brushed the pollen onto the silver petals while explaining, by pollinating the lunar silk flower with the phoenix firebloom's pollen, we encourage the lunar silk flower to inherit some of the firebloom's traits. Since those two plants shared a similar environment, their compatibility is decent and it will help with the birth of new plants with the desired traits. What if they weren't compatible? Felix inquired. If two plants weren't compatible at all, it doesn't mean that crossbreeding them will end up in failure, it just means that the failure percentage will be in the higher ends. Lady Sphinx shared, however, if a miracle occurred and against all odds, the crossbreeding succeeded, the new plant would be stronger than both plants combined. That's because it will inherit the strengths of its parent plants, and since their environments were different, it will allow the new plant to survive tougher situations. In other words, the new plant will be given more time to evolve, and enhance its genetic pool, which will increase its grade slowly over time, Felix commented with a look of intrigue. Exactly, time and environmental hazards are the primary killers of natural treasures. However, if they survive and evolve, it's almost a guarantee to turn into a high-graded treasure. Lady Sphinx nodded. No wonder it's impossible to cultivate S-graded and above natural treasures even if the right environment was given. Felix knew that there were many botanists in the Alliance working on cultivating natural treasures either for research purposes or for sale. None of them had yet to cultivate an S-graded natural treasure in the real world. That's because for their evolution to happen, they require specific extremely harsh conditions plus a very, very long period. No one would want to invest trillions of coins in such a project when even the end rewards might not come after thousands of years of struggle. So, almost all botanists focus on cultivating A-graded natural treasures and below, even those natural treasures weren't easy to get. Time is the biggest wall any botanist faces. Even I have managed to cultivate only 4 SS natural treasures, and 1 SSS natural treasure after countless trials and errors. Lady Sphinx shared. That's already too impressive. Felix raised an eyebrow in surprise. Lady Sphinx didn't have any time manipulation abilities, so she had to wait for God knows how many years for each natural treasure to reach its peak evolution. Such godly patience and resolve only true researchers possessed. With Illusion Domain, it will be a million times easier to run controlled simulations. For example, Lady Sphinx requested while pointing at the silk flower, speed up the time by 100 and increase the richness of fire elemental energy around it. Felix did as he was told and created a small invisible bubble around the flower filled with fire elemental energy, then, he sped the time specifically inside the bubble. With the time sped up by 100, Felix and the rest were able to watch with anticipation as the seeds began to sprout and grow at an astonishing rate. Within moments, the slender shoots burst forth from the earth, their petals a rich, silvery green. As they stretched toward the sky, the buds at their tips started to unfurl, revealing a new breed of flowers. They bore the same fiery hue as the phoenix firebloom's blossoms but retained the unique shimmer of the lunar silk flower's petals. Felix couldn't help but smile as he witnessed the birth of this extraordinary creation. Lunar fire bloom, high-quality B-graded natural treasure. If consumed raw, it gives the user a decent 1% to 3% fire affinity rating with a few stomach-related side effects. But the majority of people use it as the main ingredient to concoct rank 3 fire shell potion. He shared, it gives the user a temporary 7 days peak resistance to fire, making it high in demand for anyone desiring to explore hot areas. Lady Sphinx nodded. It's a crossbreed that incorporates the best of both parent plants. It possesses the lunar silk flower's resilience and adaptability, while the fiery blossoms enhanced its absorption of fire elemental energy and heat resistance. Even though the grade remained the same, the treasure's quality and effects make it extremely desirable compared to its parents. Felix smiled. Crossbreeding is truly a universe with endless possibilities. I have been giving books related to natural treasures and their details. Lady Sphinx manifested a mountain of books next to Felix and said, those are specific for crossbreeding, botanic genetics understanding, biochemistry, and more. Use your clones to read them, and when you are done, we can start straight away with crossbreeding some new variations. I understand, Felix replied while staring at the mountain of books. If they were organized into a library, it would fill up at least 100 shelves. Felix knew that even with his clone's assistance and wisdom it would take him a week or less to integrate and condense such a heavy load of information in his brain. Lady Sphinx wasn't going to let the week go to waste. For now, let's return to potion making. Lady Sphinx said, it's time you mastered some rank 6 potions. I am more than ready, Felix replied with a hint of excitement as he had been waiting for this day for a long time now. Who could blame him? Potions capable of affecting primogenitors were similar in rank to high-quality divine equipment. In other words, Felix could use them in his battles. Let's start with God's Pillar Potion. Lady Sphinx uttered with a faint smile. 1553 God's Pillar. God's Pillar? Sounds powerful. Felix was left intrigued at such a bold and overbearing name. He knew of almost all existing potions besides the rank 6 ones, as Lady Sphinx kept a tight lid on them, not exposing their names, don't even mention their details. That's a name bringing some memories, Thor said with a nostalgic tone. You still possess some of them, Sphinx? Hormungandr raised an eyebrow in surprise. It will be of massive help to Felix if he drank one before his battle with Nemo's alter ego. My stock ran out a long time ago. Lady Sphinx shook her head. Unfortunately, I am missing some key ingredients to concoct one. Thought so, it was difficult to buy one from you in the old times, and that's when there was a decent quantity of high-graded natural treasures lying around. Thor sighed in disappointment. Can someone tell me what does it do? Felix was more curious than ever after listening to their discussion. It's one of the most powerful and desirable potions during the primogenitor's era. Almost everyone sought to purchase them from Sphinx, and if she didn't have them, they would seek out to find its materials and request her to concoct them. Hormungandr shared with a solemn tone, it was for a valid reason. God Pilla's potion enables primogenitors to trade their longevity with an insane all-rounded boost of strength, ranging from 10% to even 50%. That much? Felix sucked a deep cold breath in shock. He understood that the higher someone enhanced his strength, the harder it got to get even more powerful. Yet, for a potion to help primogenitors rank beings empower themselves by such a massive percentage was literal insanity. It could change the balance of the fight almost immediately. Unfortunately, the enhancement is temporarily lasting for a couple of minutes at best. When it ends, the side effects are too severe to handle even for us. Thor recalled with an irritated tone while looking at the Darkins who were brushing the ground. I was forced to consume a potion during one of our battles, and while we won the conflict, I ended up slumbering for at least a century to recover my dried up longevity. The Darkins flinched at his look and swiftly lowered their heads, acting like they hadn't heard him. But how does your longevity get affected when you are immortal? Felix was slightly confused by this. Let me put it this way, mortals' longevity is like an unrecoverable life essence. Once consumed either naturally or through other methods, the mortal ends up dead after an aging process. End of story. Thor clarified, however, for us primogenitors and all immortals in the universe, our life essence could be recovered with time even when consumed wholly. If it is empty, we become weak, old, and lose our natural functions just like any other creature. To help with its recovery, we tend to sleep to reduce energy intake and let the body focus wholly on restoring its life essence. I see. Felix nodded in understanding. Felix always wondered what immortality was like, and even when he became a deity, he was still not technically an immortal yet. Now, he understood that his life essence wasn't recoverable like them, and this was the only point that differentiates mortals from immortals. Felix had a strong feeling that he would become a true immortal after he broke through the origin realm. While you aren't an immortal, you could live for tens of millions of years if not more. Lady Sphinx said, this means you can take at least one potion and be able to survive its drastic side effects. I thought so the same. Felix nodded with a hardened expression, as my master said, it will help me a lot in my upcoming challenge. I will give it my best to find the missing essential ingredients. Felix was already on a mission to locate new and rare SSS and natural treasures. He might as well start hunting for all of them to concoct any rank 6 potion able to help him. Focus first on learning how to brew it. Rank 6 potions are nowhere close to other potions in terms of difficulty and complexity. Lady Sphinx said while creating a concoction station in front of them. When Felix switched his focus to the right table and saw the materials on it, his breath was stolen away in astonishment. Ethereal orchid, eclipse rose petals, serpent root sap, abyssal coral extract, holy. Seeing this many SSS and treasures on a mixture table is something I never expected when I became a Podi-1er. Felix was already told that rank 6 potions required only SSS and natural treasures, yet, it was still a shocking sight to see so many in one place. Just one of them was enough to buy an entire empire. Focus, I am going to brew it only once and it will be your turn. Lady Sphinx intoned while rolling her sleeves. Soon, Lady Sphinx began by carefully plucking the eclipse rose's petals gently and carefully. As you know, the eclipse rose can absorb the solar energy during a solar eclipse and enhance its potentness by double for some time. Unfortunately, for this mixture to work, you will need recently charged petals. Otherwise, the potion will be a dud. Felix was left speechless. He didn't think that there would be important steps before he could even begin the preparation of materials. How could you even find that you need charged petals for the potion to work? Candace inquired with a curious tone. Trials, countless trials to count. Lady Sphinx shared, luckily, the old times were rich with high-graded natural treasures due to the elemental energies were at their highest levels and not many people to harvest them. Plus, you were getting a lot gifted from us for the sake of enhancing our chances of being the first to buy your end products. Thor chuckled, God knows how many SSS and natural treasures we bestow you. True. Lady Sphinx smiled faintly, remembering those sweet times of putting one leg after another and letting primogenitors slave for her experiments. Since the majority of primogenitors had supermassive empires stretching for many galaxies, their descendants always brought them unfamiliar natural treasures at their orders and no one dared to steal or cheat. So, Lady Sphinx had dibs on all new undiscovered natural treasures and the primogenitors sent them without expecting any immediate payment. If it wasn't for them, there was no way she would have created such a big number of rank 6 potions. Soon, Lady Sphinx finished plucking the petals and placed them in a small crystal vial, not too bothered if they were meshed together. She placed the veil to the side and reached out to a separate glass container. Then, she picked the serpent root sap and the abyssal coral extract. They were both in small bottles. You will have to mix 5 drops of serpent root sap and 1 vial of abyssal coral extract. This combination will create a synergistic effect that balances the potion's properties. Felix remained silent and kept noting down the steps in his mind. Gently crush and add 1 bloom of the ethereal orchid to the mixture. The orchid's ethereal properties will help bind the ingredients together. Let them rest for no less than 2 minutes, and after the duration ends, pour the mixture into the crystal vial containing the eclipse rose petals. Ensure that all ingredients are thoroughly mixed. After this, carefully pour 100 ml of pure spring water into the cauldron and turn on the oven at 280 degrees for half a minute before finally putting in the mixture. While she was explaining, Lady Sphinx was doing the exact steps one by one until the mixture was inside the cauldron. Then, we close it and let it cook for 1 minute under the same heat. Lady Sphinx uttered as she closed the cauldron. So far, nothing is too complex. Felix asked with a weird look, is the difficulty purely related to dealing with the dark reaction? He always knew that the dark reaction was tough to handle, but when he heard about rank 6 potion difficulty and such, he expected a more complex mixture process. What did you expect? Needing to do the rain dance around the cauldron 3 times or start fooling around with the heat for no reason? Lady Sphinx chuckled. I mean. Felix scratched his cheek a little. 1554 God's Pillar. 2. Don't worry, you want difficulty, you will see difficulty after 1 minute. Lady Sphinx's attitude turned composed again as she sat in a floating meditation position in front of the cauldron. Above her head, a screen appeared that showed the atomic world inside the mixture. The different molecules were in the process of breaking apart and integrating. Felix focused on the edges of the atomic world, knowing that the dark creatures always invaded the mixture from the edges and aimed to devour the molecules until they reached the center. Wait, why isn't she putting a mental barrier to prepare for the dark reaction? Felix knitted his eyebrows in confusion. He knew that Podiwaners were required to place the mental barrier swiftly and enlarge it as much as possible to protect the mixture before the dark reaction began. This would allow them to secure a significant chunk of the mixture after the integration process ends, and they could move on to the final enhancement step with much larger odds of concocting the potion. For example, if 30% of the mixture was saved from the dark reaction, the Podiwaner would have a 30% chance to succeed in his concoction. Yet, Lady Sphinx kept waiting silently for close to a minute without making a single move. What's more shocking was the fact that the dark reaction had yet to appear, which should have been impossible in Felix's eyes. How is it taking so long to manifest? More than 30% of the molecules have integra. Before Felix could finish his thought, a strange and unsettling phenomenon began to unfold within the atomic world of the mixture. The potion's cauldron emitted a faint, ominous glow as dark, microscopic organisms emerged from the depths of obscurity. These minuscule invaders, shadowy and malevolent, seemed to appear out of nowhere. The dark reaction was here. Instead of showing up from the edges like a tidal wave as he anticipated, they surged explosively across the atomic landscape, popping off randomly and uncontrollably. What the actual F***ck? This sight shocked Felix to his core, forcing him to lean closer with his eyes widened to the limit. He understood that the only reason dealing with the dark reaction was manageable was due to their predictability, allowing the Podiwaner to prepare against them. But this? There was nothing to predict, nothing to defend with mental barriers, as they kept devouring and corrupting the mixture of molecular structure across the entire atomic plane. How could anyone save the mixture from this? Before this thought could take root in his mind, with swift and deliberate actions, Lady Sphinx conjured protective barriers and invoked a powerful microscopic army of sand-based golden creatures. She launched the sand army against the dark microscopic organisms, causing a war to rage in millions of different areas. It's always fascinating to see Lady Sphinx at her peak state. Elder Kraken shared a tone of awe as he watched the sand soldiers armed with tiny weapons that glistered with ethereal energy. The sand warriors moved in perfect harmony, their movements synchronized like a well-drilled army. They wielded their tiny weapons with incredible skill, slashing through the dark invaders as they came. There were even some sand soldiers forming defensive formations, creating protective barriers around the most vulnerable parts of the potion mixture. To be able to control such a large-sized army close to perfection while also making sure to keep an eye on newly manifested dark microorganisms, damn, I don't think it's even possible for us to pull it off if we were given the same tools. Thor supported, his eyes showed utter awe. He might not understand much about potion concoctions, but he knew that Lady Sphinx was using 100% of her mind if not more to keep track of such chaos. The mental prowess, intelligence, and elemental manipulation skill required to pull something off like this is on a different level. Felix murmured while wholly seized by the microscopic war. He was already considered the second greatest Podiwunner after Lady Sphinx, yet, while he was watching her work, Felix couldn't help but realize that she was in a different realm than him. Even if he managed to reach or surpass her Podiwunner skills, she would always be much more special than him. That's called the touch of an artist, a master of a field. Meanwhile, the dark microorganisms, though numerous and relentless, found themselves outmatched by the Sand Army's determination and prowess. Slowly but surely, the tide of battle began to turn in favor of the defenders. With each swing of their ethereal weapons, the sand soldiers carved a path through the encroaching darkness. The dark microorganisms, unable to withstand the onslaught, could only fall, their sinister presence diminishing. After a whole minute, the largest known war in the universe's history was finally concluded in favor of Lady Sphinx after the mixture's integration finished. Before Felix could check on the mixture size that was saved, the cauldron shook with a sudden burst of energy, causing the ground to quiver. A golden hue emitted from the cauldron, illuminating the surroundings with an ethereal glow. Felix's eyes widened in awe as he could feel the concoction surging with great vitality. Boom! With a sudden burst of force, the lid of the cauldron was blown off, sending it into the sky. A brilliant cascade of divine light erupted from within, painting the area in a resplendent array of colors. It was a breathtaking sight, one that seemed almost otherworldly. But it was the aroma that followed that truly captivated the senses. A tantalizing fragrance saturated the air, a harmonious blend of the rarest and most exquisite ingredients. It was a scent that promised power, vitality, and unparalleled strength. Without much of a reaction, Lady Sphinx picked up the cauldron and poured the silky golden liquid into 3 spherical glass vessels. Then, she sealed the potions with corks and placed them on the table before she transformed off the oven. Catch! Lady Sphinx threw one of the potions at Felix, causing him to wake up from his daze and catch it on his chest. With a look of reverence, Felix sized up the divine elixir, feeling like strength was coursing through his being just by holding it. So, is this an appropriate difficulty for you? Lady Sphinx smiled a little and took a seat next to the station. Even though she was smiling, sweat drops were seen coursing down her forehead. I kinda wish we just did some rain dance around the cauldron. Felix commented with a forced smile. Even for him, this **T was on a godly level of difficulty, and now he began to understand why Lady Sphinx never bothered to teach the witches rank 6 potions. The war isn't even the hardest part. Lady Sphinx notified with a serious tone. It's the fact that for rank 6 potions to succeed, you can't let more than 1% of the mixture get devoured. That's because there is no enhancement step to help out, and you need to guarantee its success no matter what. Give me a break. Felix rubbed his temples in concern and fear at the sound of that. Who could blame him for reacting like this? It was already close to impossible to find SSS and natural treasures, and if he managed to win the war against the dark reaction somehow, the potion was still prone to failure based on the saved percentage of the mixture. In other words, if he saved only 90% and the potion failed because of that 10%, he would lose everything in one attempt. Don't dwell too much, practice makes perfect. Lady Sphinx stretched her hand at the station and uttered indifferently, "It's your turn." "Wait a second, I still have way too many questions." "Don't care, give it a try first, and let's carry on from there." 1555 testing his options. Not daring to argue with her, Felix stepped in front of the concoction station and eyed the ethereal glorious materials, feeling like he was tainting them just with his presence. "I have no problems with the preparation steps, but dealing with that chaotic type of dark reaction is something I am not equipped to handle yet." Felix leaned on the table and began brainstorming on the best method to defeat the dark reaction while securing at least 70% plus of the mixture as a start. Master used sand soldiers equipped with weapons enhanced by mental energy and was hands-on the entire war, covering every inch of the atomic world. Felix frowned. "No matter how much I think about it, I don't see myself being able to copy her method anytime soon." Felix would rather think of a much more efficient and simpler method. He understood that his master was forced to use the Sand Army since she didn't have any better alternative without affecting the integrity of the mixture. However, in his case, he had a decent number of options to choose from. Master said that poison can't be used since it will affect the mixture's integration, but with my current advanced understanding of poison and potion concoction field, I can create a new type of poison that specifically targets those dark microorganisms. Felix always believed that poison would be the greatest solution to the dark reaction. If he managed to create an inducement capable of erasing it, he would easily surrender the mixture with the inducement before the dark reaction could happen. When they do appear, they would die almost instantly, not eating even 1% of the mixture. There is also a destruction element. If I were able to mark the dark reaction, I could easily use concept destruction and remove it without touching the mixture. It's way easier than the poison method for sure, but... Felix smiled bitterly. He understood that his concept destruction ability worked only if had close to a perfect understanding of the target. He couldn't mark just anything and erase it like when he used to possess Lord Shiva's destruction trident. With the erasure palm, he had to work tirelessly to understand concepts individually and he still lacked many of them. Felix already knew that the dark reaction was considered a peculiar phenomenon related to spiritual energy rather than physical microscopic organisms. He found out by himself after testing his normal destruction energy on the dark reaction in one of his concoctions. Unfortunately, the destruction energy merely passed through them like they were ghosts, which made him certain that their bodies weren't physical. This was the reason why his master enhanced her soldiers' weapons with mental energy. How can I understand something that even my master has yet to figure out fully? Felix sighed, knowing that this path was going to lead him either to a dead end or take a significant portion of his time. Even my poison method requires me to have a deeper understanding of the dark reaction since I will be using true poison 3rd level, soul poison to affect it. I might even need to create a whole new version of soul poison for it. Lady Sphinx listened to his thought process silently, not wanting to offer him any helping hand at the moment. At the same time, she didn't rush him to begin the concoction, understanding that he needed to find a strategy fitting him first. How about illusion? Felix thought about it for a moment. Is it possible to cast a minimized illusion domain inside the atomic world? It will give me the freedom to do whatever I want to the dark reaction. Let's start with this. Felix rolled up his sleeves and started the concoction process by following Lady Sphinx's exact steps, appearing like a male clone version of her. He was precise and careful, fast, but steady. Before long, he finished the preparation and placed the mixture inside the cauldron with the pure spring water as the catalyst. He closed the cauldron and activated his quantum vision, then, he peered into the mixture, zooming through the cauldron's lit atomic structure until he reached the mixture's area. I only have 1 minute of preparation. Felix swiftly released his illusion domain and expanded it at a rapid pace, covering quadrillion upon quadrillion atoms each moment. With his current mental prowess, he was able to cover the entire mixture's atomic world in less than half a minute. Then, Felix used his illusion domain to create a fog of concept destruction, releasing it everywhere and waiting for the dark reaction to happen. In his illusion domain, whatever he said worked as long as the illusion's effect took hold of the target. So, even if he didn't have an understanding of the dark reaction, he could erase them with his concept of destruction fog through illusion domain. Alas! The instant the dark reaction occurred and the organisms were spawned, they completely ignored the destruction fog and continued their voracious feast on the mixture's molecules, their insatiable appetite unyielding. Felix watched with a bitter smile as his normally infallible concept destruction proved to be ineffective. I guess they are immune to illusions. He was more prone to believe that his illusions were ineffective than to think that his concept destruction fog wasn't doing its job. In his eyes, if those dark organisms were able to get slayed through mental energy, then they were destroyable. Reset. Felix snapped his finger and the entire concoction station returned to its original form. He understood that his concoction attempt had failed and there was no saving it. They are even immune to illusions. I really wonder about their origin, Felix remarked with an intrigued look. So do I. Lady Sphinx replied. Is it possible to learn more about the dark reaction? Felix requested. With illusion being out of the picture, I am left with 3 options: your method, poison, and concept destruction. I prefer eliminating the other 2 options before using yours. I only have a rocky theory for its existence. Lady Sphinx shared, I believe that the shadowy response occurs when certain elements and compounds react in ways that cannot be explained by conventional alchemical principles. These reactions lead to the creation of this unknown substance, which seeks utter destruction of the end product. Felix nodded, absorbing the information as he listened intently. As for the organisms themselves, Lady Sphinx continued with a serious tone, they seem to be native to a realm beyond our understanding, a place where conventional science and alchemy cease to apply. It's as if they exist on the fringe of our reality, immune to our attempts to manipulate and control them. You mean something like creatures from the quantum realm? Felix furrowed his brow, intrigued by the complexities of this newfound challenge. That's what I believe. Lady Sphinx nodded. In my attempts to further solidify my theory, I have entered the quantum realm on many occasions. However, my low mental energy forces me to return after a short while, not enough time to truly study the realities down there. In Lady Sphinx's mind, if the origin of the dark response was the quantum realm, then there was a possibility to find an approach to lock down their invasion before it could happen. Felix managed to pick up her thought process, leaving him somewhat baffled. Why are you still trying to find ways to deal with the shadowy response though? I can understand you wanting to learn about them, but haven't you already perfected concocting rank 6 potions? In the case of Felix, it was normal for him to seek methods to handle the shadowy reaction, but Lady Sphinx had already conquered them. He had just witnessed how they got utterly owned during her concoction, not letting them consume even 1% of the mixture. In other words, her success rate of rank 6 potions was almost a 100%. True, the shadowy response isn't an issue for me when it comes to potion making, but... Lady Sphinx uttered calmly, who told you that the dark reaction occurs only during potion concoction? Come again. Felix was left stunned at such a bombshell. 1556 The most insane theory they had ever heard. Most of the tenants were also taken aback as they had never heard about this before. I was planning on telling you about this after you start getting a little better at crossbreeding and biochemistry in general, but you might as well know now. Lady Sphinx expressed, the dark reaction also occurs when crossbreeding any plant-based natural treasure above SS grade. However, the reaction itself is slightly different than the one appearing in potion concoction. This news made Felix feel his heart skip a beat. He knew that crossbreeding high-graded natural treasures was already going to be an insanely difficult task to pull. Now, he even had to deal with another type of dark reaction. Different how? Felix asked with a deep frown. It's best to see it. Lady Sphinx manifested 2 natural treasures, the luminous moonbloom and the infernal rose. Both plants were SS graded and considered highly sought after marvelous treasures. As she meticulously cultivated the hybrid seeds and asked Felix to speed up their growth, Everyone noticed something unusual. Is this normal? Most likely not. The plant exhibited an erratic and unpredictable growth pattern, its petals sometimes emitting dazzling bioluminescent hues and, at other times, erupting into uncontrolled flames. It was as if the fundamental laws of botany were being rewritten before their eyes. While Felix hadn't studied much about crossbreeding, he understood that a combination of those two plants should turn into an SS&-graded natural treasure called luminous infernal rose. Lady Sphinx would never fail to provide the right conditions for this plant to be born successfully. Yet, here it was, seemingly collapsing on itself. In a few moments, which were translated into many years within the time bubble, the rose turned into a withering dead plant, not an ounce of life was seen in it. As you have seen, the dark reaction in crossbreeding takes a long while to ruin the plant's life. Lady Sphinx said. Why is that? Felix inquired while crouching next to the rose, picking up whatever was left of it. With a mere soft touch, the stem turned into grey dust. Unlike in potion concoction, the dark reaction here attacks the DNA of the plant periodically. It happens in random waves until the plant either fully grows or it dies in the process. Lady Sphinx explained while manifesting a recording of what happened to the plant on DNA level. Felix and the others focused on a dark, amorphous substance, infiltrating into the DNA of those two plants intertwined. It wormed its way into the delicate dance of genetic material, attempting to disrupt the growth and fusion of these botanical treasures. It's breaking the DNA apart and infusing itself with it. Candace exclaimed at the sight of the dark substance, shattering the DNA and forcefully getting itself entangled with it. Why do I feel like the dark substance isn't trying to destroy the plant but merge with it? Felix had a deep frown while watching the same scene. In his eyes, if the dark substance was purely destructive, it wouldn't force itself to merge with the plant's DNA and remain attached to it. Instead, it would devour the entire DNA structure and keep expanding its presence until the plant dies in less than a minute. This was happening in the potion concoction. Good catch, I also share the same sentiment as you. Lady Sphinx remarked with a serious tone. I have dealt with the dark reaction my entire life and my experiences with it on a genetics level were the reason I reached the theory that the dark substance's origin was the quantum realm. How so? Hormungandr asked. Lady Sphinx remained silent for a moment before shaking her head. It's way too crazy of a theory even for my standards, there is no need to fill your mind with rubbish. Master. This was the first time Felix heard his master call her theory rubbish. No matter how insane her theories sounded before, she always believed in some truth in them. Some proved to be right and some turned to be false. Yet, she always had a bit of conviction in them. Even the tenants felt that it was a weird reaction from her and this made them even more curious about it. Sphinx, just let us know and we will judge for ourselves. Elder Kraken requested. As a researcher, he could never laugh at a theory no matter how ridiculous it sounded. The others jumped in and pressed Lady Sphinx to bring them up to date, knowing that if they didn't pressure her, she would keep it hidden forever. When Lady Sphinx saw everyone's dying interest to know, she caved in. Fine. Lady Sphinx shared, the reason I have been visiting the quantum realm isn't just because I believed those microorganisms originated from there, but also that someone or something was sending them. Hey! Come again! You serious? Interesting. Whether it was Felix or Lord Shiva, all the tenants were taken aback by her ludicrous theory. For someone or something from the quantum realm to be responsible for the dark reaction. It was crazy just to think about it. What made you reach such a conclusion? Elder Kraken took it seriously, I believe the dark reaction occurs on a universal scale. So, how could someone smaller than even an atom be responsible for such a large-scale operation? That's why I told you all that it's a rubbish theory filled with holes. Lady Sphinx remarked calmly, I understand how insane it sounds even for me, but, I merely thought of it because of the little evidence it supports it. Most importantly, there isn't any other reasonable explanation for the dark reaction. Let's say there is some right into the theory, what do you think is the purpose of that person or thing for doing this? Thor asked. Can't you figure it out by now? Hormungandr answered calmly, she must believe that someone is using the dark reaction to manifest himself in the universe. The F***CK? Is that why the dark reaction isn't seeking to kill the plants and keeps merging with its DNA? Thor raised an eyebrow in surprise. That's what I believe at least. Lady Sphinx nodded. In a sense, Lady Sphinx's theory, while it sounded too crazy to be true, does have some merit to it. The dark reaction has always been a mystery, and you said that the universe can't be responsible for this. Its ways of action are direct and brutal. Felix spoke with a careful tone, so, it's not far-fetched to believe that someone else must have a hand in it. Especially, when the quantum realm is one massive mystery box that has never been opened yet. Felix truly believed that the universe could not have a hand in the dark reaction since it wasn't its motto at all. If it wanted to stop anyone from crossbreeding higher-rank plants or concocting potions, it would have done so by making it impossible from the start, instead of introducing an unfamiliar dark substance that could be overpowered. Just because it can't be the universe, it doesn't mean that someone or something has a hand in it, Fenrir said expressionlessly. True. Lord Loki joined while chewing on gum. While it sounds fun that someone might be pulling the strings from the quantum realm, it doesn't explain how both dark reactions are different from one another. But, are they different? Felix narrowed his eyes. Think deeply about it, are they really different? Felix wasn't planning to let this go for a simple reason, he could never forget those red eyes he saw when he zoomed inside the dark microorganisms many years ago. They scared the sh*t out of him, and they seemed alive, sinister, and just not from this universe. Meanwhile, Lady Sphinx smiled with a hint of pride as she looked at Felix, knowing that he had truly come a long way to pick on the similarities almost immediately with just one example. As for the others? Even with all of the wisdom under them, it still took them some careful thinking to spot the similarities. Elder Kraken was the first to speak with a look of utter astonishment. The dark microorganism also seemed to be seeking to merge with the molecules, but since potion concoction was a delicate process and they invaded during the most critical moment of the integration, they ended up causing the entire situation to deteriorate almost instantly. 1557 Pulling the strings. Meanwhile, the crossbred plant is a slow and steady process as long as the conditions are respected. This allows the dark microorganism to invade its DNA and latch itself into it akin to a parasite without causing the plant to die immediately. Lord Loki jumped in. In other words, the dark reaction was the same, but because the conditions were different, it resulted in different outcomes. If it's like this, what's the point? Candace remarked with a puzzled tone, we let the flower grow without interrupting the dark reaction and it ended its life. If someone wanted to manifest himself through taking advantage of crossbreeding plants, then his plan ain't working at all. As I said, my theory is too flawed and I have tested it with many different methods, but nothing was close to confirming it. Lady Sphinx informed, besides visiting the quantum realm, I crossbred countless plants and focused on helping the dark substance remain attached to the plants while it kept growing. Unfortunately, not a single one made it out alive. So, I gave up on it. Everyone nodded in understanding. If they were in Lady Sphinx's shoes, they would have done the same. By the way, has a dark reaction ever appeared during the genetic manipulation of creatures? Felix asked. Felix felt that it was a bit peculiar that the dark reaction occurred only during genetic manipulation related to natural treasures. In his eyes, wouldn't it be best for that someone to target actual people? I have also tested it out. Lady Sphinx shook her head, I don't know yet if it didn't show because genetics manipulation was a man-made process unlike potion concoction and crossbreeding, or it just doesn't happen to creatures. While potion concoction and crossbreeding were influenced by potioners and botanists, the process itself was natural. Meanwhile, genetics manipulation was different since the geneticist was responsible for breaking apart DNA, rebuilding it, and such, it was an unnatural process. If it was related to whether it's natural or not, then shouldn't dark reaction appear during our bloodline integration? Felix remarked. That's what I thought, but you should understand that the dark reaction's appearance seems arbitrary. Lady Sphinx explained, in terms of potion concoction, it manifests very early on even lower grade potions. However, in crossbreeding, it appears only on grade SS and above hybridized natural treasures. So, what if we merely haven't found the conditions for its activation during creatures' genetics evolutions or manipulation? That makes sense. Felix and the others nodded in agreement. They realized that when it came to the dark reaction, it was best not to make any guarantees. Such a mysterious phenomenon wasn't to be messed with, especially when there was a theory related to an intelligent figure pulling the strings from another realm. Whether there is someone responsible for the dark reaction down there or not, you need to master how to get rid of it to keep improving yourself. Thor said calmly, that's your main focus. I am planning to put a clone on studying it, in hopes of being able to mark it and get rid of it with concept destruction. If it fails, I will have another clone training with the master's method and also figure out another method if possible. Felix replied. While this theory had captured Felix's interest, he wasn't planning to get his focus diverted from its target to prove if it was correct or false. All he needed to do at the moment was learn how to get rid of it, and this would help him with both his crossbreeding and potion concoction. But, before then, he had to learn how to crossbreed grade S and below natural treasures. Obviously, he also planned to put a clone on this duty. As for his main consciousness, he was going to explore the universe for natural treasures and elemental minerals. Just because luck was involved, it didn't mean he wasn't going to test out if he was fortunate or not. His first predetermined destination was one of the richest discovered areas in the universe with natural treasures, the ancestral dragon dimensional pocket. A couple of days later, Felix had returned to the Void Empire's dimensional pocket and was bestowed another immunity by Nemo after he recovered his energy. Then, he picked him up and continued his journey to the ancestral dragon dimensional pocket. Merely 30% of the collected void creatures were left behind, and they weren't enough for a third wish. So, there was no need for Nemo to be there anymore, as his fellow nation citizens would be focusing on gathering a new batch. It would take a couple of years at least to collect enough for a third immunity. Then, he would be forced to wait a couple of decades to restock the void creatures before he could finish all the immunities. Obviously, he made sure to order all of his citizens to bring him any unfamiliar natural treasure they found. As for Olivia, Selphie, Noah, and Bodadai, Felix had told them to meet up with him in Icarius Galaxy. While he wanted them around him to help with their growth through his illusion domain like before, he also understood that it was best to have as many capable hands as possible when it came to rare treasure hunting. After spending a few days on the road, Felix arrived at Icarius Galaxy and went to the meet-up location, which was pretty close to the dragon's capital planet, Zuham. Whoosh! Suddenly, a small spatial rift appeared inside the Eternal Knotlaw's gigantic wide-open training hall, before Bodadai and Olivia jumped out of it. Felix. Just as Olivia wanted to greet Felix happily, her face was changed into puzzlement after seeing his new appearance. But, by now, she was already used to his constant makeover, so she wasn't too shocked, but simply curious. You look and feel so demonic. What happened? She asked as she kept walking around him while smelling him akin to a curious deer. I devoured Lucifer and got his powers. Felix answered causally, not caring any more about hiding the truth. Lucifer? Wasn't he already dead? It's a long story, I will tell you later, Felix uttered as he patted her head. Okay. Olivia dropped the subject right away. Boss, you better prepare a feast for me. It's too many jumps, Bodadai complained while returning inside the spatial rift. Bring the others quickly or you will be the feast, Felix uttered annoyedly. Cough, right away. Bodadai muttered under his breath as he stepped into the rift, once an asshole, always an asshole. Felix's eyelids twitched after hearing him curse, but he let it by, knowing that lazy fat worm would always be like this. After a short while, Bodadai brought the others one by one until the squad was back again. The instant Selfie reunited with Felix in real life, she stuck to him akin to glue in their gathering, not bothered by his new appearance in the slightest. At this point, he could look like a tree and she wouldn't care. While Felix was a bit bothered by it, he let it be. He understood that his death was traumatizing for her and that it would take a while to get used to his return. Plus, she never pushed her clinginess and always respected his boundaries, so he was cool with it. "Noah, I got you a present," Felix uttered with a faint smile while sitting with everyone around an empty table. Noah raised his head expressionlessly, but a hint of intrigue could be seen in his eyes. "Bring the food," Felix ordered while clapping his hands twice. With heads lowered and wearing butlers' outfits, and an array of food being carried telepathically around them, Saurus and Wendigo walked towards the table. "You." Even though they were demonized and their appearances changed, the instant Noah looked at them, his cold body was set in flames from fury. No one understood Noah's inner fury more than Felix. The only difference between them was that Felix had the strength to get his revenge while Noah was still trying his utmost best to obtain uttered strength and get his own. Felix knew that Noah would never get his closure unless he saved his sister, but this should make it at least a bit easier. "They are now my slaves. They will do whatever I ask them and they will gladly let you vent your suppressed anger till your heart's content. Am I right?" Felix asked coldly while eyeing the Darkins. "Yes, Master." "Yes, Master." The Darkins replied simultaneously without an ounce of emotion shown on their faces. 1558 Losing his empathy. "Are they?" Selfie was startled after figuring out the Darkins' identity. Even Lady Yggdrasil inside her consciousness was left stunned, not expecting in the slightest to see her peers become enslaved. "I have to learn about this." Without an ounce of hesitation, she reached out to her close friend Lady Sphinx, asking for details. Meanwhile, Noah's and Olivia's eyes were fixed on the Darkins, while Noah's hatred and anger were fully planted on his face. Olivia seemed frozen in place like she saw a ghost. She also lost her parents and relatives, whom she was pretty close to, unlike Felix or Noah. So, Earth's destruction caused her a great amount of pain and it took her great effort to close that chapter in her life. Thud. With tears threatening to come out, Olivia stood up and ran away while covering her face. "Little Oli," Felix muttered, a bit taken aback by her reaction. "I will take care of it." Selfie gave Felix a slightly disappointed look and chased after Olivia. Only now did Felix realize that what he did was pretty insensitive on so many levels. All he was thinking about was making Noah and Olivia inflict violence and torture on their loved ones' killers as well their loved ones' killers. But, not everyone was cruel and bloodthirsty like him. Olivia might have been mad and full of hatred towards the Darkins, but she didn't let such negative emotions consume her. Instead, she received all the help and care from Lady Yggdrasil and Selfie to move on peacefully and not let her purity get corrupted. Not everyone was obsessed with revenge and what Felix just did to Olivia was simply unforgivable, putting her loved one's killers in front of her after she finally healed, causing her previous traumas to emerge again. "How did I become this insensitive?" Felix murmured while glancing at his demonic hand, feeling less and less of a human each day. The fact that he thought even Olivia would be somewhat happy with this present made him feel sick in his stomach. He knew that he would have never made such a mistake before devouring Lucifer. He would have waited until he was alone with Olivia and explained the situation to her instead of throwing the Darkins in her face. "I am becoming instinctually more evil without noticing it, this isn't good," Felix said coldly. "On the other hand, I can do whatever I want with them?" Noah asked with a suppressed rough voice like he was holding himself from yelling. Noah was more like Felix in this department and he loved the gift more than anything. "Go ahead." Felix waved his hand and teleported him and the Darkins inside an illusion domain, somewhere else in the spaceship. He froze the Darkins in their place while weakening their spiritual pressure with his own, so they wouldn't kill Noah reflexively. Then, he manipulated the time to reflect from 1 hour to 1 year, giving Noah a whole year with the Darkins to release his hatred. Be right back. Then, he took off towards Olivia's room, wanting to make amends for his mistake. This left only Bodadi sitting on the table. He looked right and left, and then lowered his head at the packed table full of all kinds of food. A faint grin appeared on his face as he muttered, "Hee hee, I guess more food for me. Little Oli, may I come in?" Felix asked softly after knocking on Olivia's door. A few moments later, Selfie opened the door and came out. Then, she closed it behind her and said with a stern tone, "Come with me, she doesn't want to see anyone." Felix peered through the door and saw Olivia curled up into a ball on her bed, crying her eyes out. He felt terrible when he discovered that he couldn't empathize with her. The sight of her crying didn't move a single string in his heart, like he was looking at someone giggling or such. "Why did you do that?" Selfie scolded with a frustrated expression. "I am sorry, I wasn't thinking straight." Felix sighed, "I will fix it. I expect you to." Selfie looked straight into Felix's eyes with concern and said, "I don't know what happened, but you have changed, and not in a good way." "I know." Felix smiled bitterly, understanding that such scenarios were going to be happening more and more. However, he didn't regret any of this one bit. For Asna's sake, he didn't mind even if he lost all of his emotions and became alone. After a few words traded back and forth between them, Selfie returned to the hall and Felix remained seated behind Olivia's door, still wanting to make amends. Even when he lacked empathy and goodness in his heart, and knew that he would be losing other positive emotions one by one, Felix didn't want to give up on being a good human. Until the day when everything gets stripped of him, he would keep fighting for his humanity. After half an hour, Olivia finally opened the door, and before Felix could say anything, she gave him a deep hug and apologized, "I am sorry for being like this. I know you were thinking about us." This was how Olivia was, kind and pure. Even when she was the one hurt the most, she still apologized first. "Don't be, I was careless and made you revisit some bad memories and emotions." Felix smiled gently as he patted her back, "I will try my best to not do it again." He couldn't even promise to be good to her, knowing that there would come a day when he could break it. Olivia didn't care about how he phrased it. She nodded silently and presented a big cute smile on her face again, seemingly forgetting about the Darkin's existence. But the eyes could not lie, and Felix was able to see the hurt in them. "Oli, the Darkins are now my slaves and they have been punished for their crimes. They will be by my side always, and if it's going to be a problem for you, I think it's best that I return you home." Felix shared calmly. He cared about Olivia enough to let her know right now and here, that the Darkins weren't going anywhere. So, she could either face her trauma for real and be by his side, or he could return her home. It depends on her. "Don't worry about me, I have it under control," Olivia assured him. "All right." Felix nodded in acceptance. Whether she was really okay with it or not, he would find out in the future. For now, there was no need to make a big problem out of this more than it is. "Let's go eat." Alas! After everyone returned, the sight that greeted them wasn't appetizing in the slightest. Bodadi lying on the ground with a massive stomach and food stains on his face, burping once in a while. As for the food on the table, nothing was left on it but empty plates and a few bones here and there. He cleared the entire table in a world record time. Verb. 1559. Returning to Ancestral Dragon Dimensional Pocket. Some time later, Felix, Olivia, Selfie, Noah, and Candice were gathered at the table again. It was loaded with new dishes and everyone was eating and talking about Felix's new mission. As for the Darkin's situation, no one brought it out again. However, Noah's complexion was a bit better after passing an entire year with the Darkins within the illusion domain. When he got out, he didn't tell anyone what happened inside. He just thanked Felix once and told him that he owed him a big one. Felix told him to not be bothered by this as they were family and he would have done the same if he were in his shoes. Will we be allowed entry into the ancestral dragon dimension? You said the ancestral dragon permitted you alone. Olivia asked with a worried tone, won't it be a little impolite? Don't worry about it, ancestral dragon is cool, Felix replied. Even though Felix didn't request his permission, he knew that he wouldn't mind having them enter his dimension, especially when they would merely be helping him with searching for rare natural treasures. If he wasn't cool about it, Felix could always send them back to the spaceship. Come on guys, I already said I am sorry. When they heard Bodadi's voice, everyone turned to glance at the wall on the right side. He was seen glued to it upside down with Felix's consciousness pressure. I am starting to feel sick, burp. Bodadi seemed like he was about to vomit everything he ate. Be quiet or I will shake you again. Felix warned annoyedly. Bodadi closed his mouth immediately. Come on Felix, I think he already learned his lesson, Selfie chuckled a little. Doubtful. Felix remarked, with his inability to control himself in front of food, he will most definitely eat any natural treasure he finds in the dimension. Felix wouldn't have cared much before, but now that he was strapped for any SSS and graded natural treasure he finds, he really would lose his sh*t if he learned that Bodadi ate one of them. I swear. Shut up. Olivia and Selfie gave Bodadi helpless looks and ignored his depressed and gloomy expression. After everyone ate, Candace turned into a void aircraft and picked everyone up. Then, she flew towards the location Felix gave her. The ancestral dragon Imrai had given Felix the location of the back door before he left the dimension, allowing him to gain access without needing to wait half a century for the main gate to be opened. This way, he wouldn't be bothered by the dragons competing in the ceremony. If it wasn't for wanting to keep his resurgence hidden, he would have reached out to Anastasia and Easy. Alas, he knew that one of them was bound to speak about meeting him with their father, Kir soon. After a few moments, the squad arrived at the provided location. It was above a small peaceful lake near a rugged giant mountain with crimson trees filling the whole area. It painted a beautiful but harrowing scene like the forest was on fire. Felix exited the void portal first and cast an illusion domain in the area, hiding everyone's presence from any detection ability or tool. I think it's here, Bodadi mentioned as he pointed at an empty area. I feel strong chaotic spatial particles. Same. Felix nodded, open it up. Bodadi went ahead and used his elemental prowess to add more to the spatial disturbance until it collapsed and an unstable rift opened up. Quick! I can't keep it stable for too long. Bodadi yelled. Whoosh! 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 Felix and the others zoomed past Bodadi and went through the dimension before he followed after them and let it collapse on itself. Boom! After a dull-sounding explosion, the lake and the forest returned to its peaceful state. On the other side, in the heart of the ancestral dragon dimension, where elemental energy flowed like lifeblood, Felix and his friends found themselves immersed in a breathtaking fantasy dream world. The sights and sounds that surrounded him were beyond anything they had ever imagined. Towering trees with iridescent leaves stretched towards the sky, their branches swaying gracefully to the elemental rhythms of wind and fire. Each tree exuded a unique aura, emanating the very essence of the elements. The serene meadow where honey rivers flowed lazily, glistening under the radiant sun. The air was filled with the sweet scent of nectar, and luminous aquatic creatures danced beneath the golden surface. Well, that's new. Felix commentated after spotting the sky above them turn into an ever-changing masterpiece with colors shifting and blending seamlessly, creating a mesmerizing kaleidoscope. It was as if the very heavens were a canvas painted by the hands of divine artists. Whoa, I have seen the ancestral dimension through screens always, but I never thought it would be even more overwhelming up close. Selfie remarked with an amazed expression. It sure is one of the most beautiful and breathtaking places across the whole universe. Felix warned, but it's also just as dangerous. If you guys aren't careful, you wouldn't know how you died. Everyone nodded in understanding, while they were confident in their strength, nothing was more frightening than the unknown. This dimension was the definition of the unknown, since each day on the outside was translated into 100 days, which meant that after each circle, thousands of years had passed and new creatures and plants were born. Since Felix hadn't come here for more than a century, God knows how much the environment had changed. Should we rumble? Just as Olivia was about to suggest getting down, the multicolored sky was turned into a massive thundercloud with lightning bolts crackling within it noisily. Then, ancestral dragon Ymir's face appeared from the lightning bolts, seemingly manifesting his face with each thunderclap. "Little boy, is that you?" Ancestral Imra's delighted voice resounded in everyone's ears, even though his entry was quite intimidating. "It's me. I apologize for the intrusion, Elder." Felix bowed his head respectfully and the others swiftly copied him. "Haha. I would have never guessed if it wasn't for your soul's uniqueness. You have changed, boy, you changed so much, you gave me a scare after entering my dimension." Ancestral Ymir laughed thunderously, literally, causing the sky to seem like it was about to collapse. Before anyone could react, the sky was turned peaceful again and a small wine jar teleported in front of them. Ancestral Ymir appeared from the jar as a withered old dragon-yawed man with a hunched back, wrinkles all over his scales, an ashy grey color. Yet, he had the widest and kindest smile planted on his face as he looked at Felix. "You didn't disappoint me one bit, not one bit." As the god of this dimensional pocket, he could feel Felix's spiritual pressure even if he tried to hide it, making him realize that he had already surpassed the primogenitor's realm. "It's still not enough, Elder, and no one else knows it more than you." Felix smiled bitterly. "I had faith in you to reach the stage where you can take down those beings before you can even look in primogenitor's eyes straight." Ancestral Ymir reassured him with a wide smile, "But now? I am certain that you will pull it off." 1560 Permission to clean the dimension. "Elder, I wish I had some of your optimism." Felix chuckled. It wasn't like Felix lacked confidence, but he had seen what those beings were capable of during the Heavenly Plains War. So, he wasn't that cocky to believe that he was going to take down them 100%. Still, this didn't mean that it would change anything. "What do you think they are talking about?" Olivia asked with a curious tone. "Who knows?" But for Felix to seem lacking in confidence, this new enemy must be on another level. Selphie replied while thinking of Unigens, knowing that only those monsters were above primogenitors in strength. The fact that Felix managed to enslave 2 primogenitors made her understand that he had already surpassed their level, which was already shocking on its own. After a short moment, Felix and Ancestral Ymir changed the subject, knowing that it wasn't time to be discussing it. "I have brought some friends with me, I hope you don't mind," Felix requested with an apologetic tone. "Don't mention it, the more, the merrier." Ancestral Ymir waved his hand causally. When it came to Felix, he treated him even better than his descendants and would never refuse such small favors from him even if he minded it. "Much appreciated." Felix nodded in gratitude before blurting out honestly, "I have come here to visit you and also to seek out rare high-grade natural treasures. I need them to concoct some potions that will help me with my dragon/devourer's cultivation systems." "Sure, you guys can pick whatever you want, and if you need assistance with finding some known ones, I am happy to offer a hand." Ancestral Ymir accepted it right away. While he was considered a god in this dimension, many natural treasures here were nameless and he never bothered to check on them. However, he could assist by telling them about the elemental capacity of each natural treasure, which would help a lot weeding the bad from the good. Thus, Felix expressed gratitude for the offer and informed him that he and his squad would be camping in the forest below. Ancestral Ymir refused to let them do so and took them to a better place underground, a small area of the Dragon City, which wasn't as damaged as the others. Felix told his friends to claim a house or set up a camp in the area. Meanwhile, he created a decent house of crystal and filled it with furniture. Afterward, he entered his consciousness space with ancestral Immer. Hello, hello, I see a lot of new faces. Ancestor Immer greeted the tenants with a polite smile. It's good to see you again, old friend. Thor and the others greeted back, some with vivid interest and some couldn't care less like Elder Shiva. Lady Sphinx went ahead and introduced the new tenants even though Ancestor Immer already figured out their identity. After some polite formalities traded back and forth between them, Ancestor Immer turned to Felix and asked with a curious tone, "So, how did you reach this stage?" "Well, I got smitten by them and sent to the spirit realm." Felix narrated with a solemn tone, "I can't discuss the details of what happened there, but I can tell you that Asna was kidnapped by them and now, I am working on a way to save her." "You actually made contact with them so early and they even took little Asna? No wonder I couldn't feel her presence at all in your soul." Ancestor Immer responded with a deep unpleasant frown. "We were also taken back." Lady Sphinx disclosed, "Felix has done nothing to provoke them and the smite just came out of nowhere." "Unprovoked? It can't be." Ancestor Immer was more shocked by this statement. He understood that the three rulers never interacted with the universe's citizens in any shape or form unless they were provoked, like what he did when he wanted to barge into the Eternal Kingdom's gate. "You got smitten, sent to the spirit realm, and came back stronger than ever, and they still haven't made a move on you again." Ancestor Immer said, "Something fishy about this. If those beings wanted you dead, you would have been dead from the first strike. Also, how come they haven't smitten you again? We also believe that there is some sort of a hidden agenda, but we still don't know what it is." Felix shared, "As for me, why haven't they attacked me again? We think it must be either Asna's core protection or they have lost interest in me after taking Asna away." "Wait, back up a little, you have her core." Ancestor Immer's wrinkly eyelids unfolded wide open in shock. Even the Darkins were left utterly stunned. They had spent a decent period with Felix after getting enslaved, and while they had learned many of his secrets, the mystery of Felix's spiritual pressure empowerment wasn't cleared yet, until now. "He possesses a Unigen's core, how is that even possible? Who knows, this freak seems to be a walking miracle." While Felix had heard their thoughts, he didn't bother to waste his time on disciplining them. Before Ancestor Immer could ask about it, Felix told him that he could not share details about how he received the core from Asna. Ancestor Immer understood his stance and refrained from focusing on this subject. After a couple of minutes of catching up with him, Felix told Ancestor Immer about his plan to become the new paragon of sins and how it was the only method available to access the Eternal Kingdom. His natural treasures and elemental minerals were going to be of great help in boosting his strength, which would in turn make Nemo's alter ego battle somewhat manageable. After figuring out the final picture, Ancestor Immer didn't hesitate to offer with a welcoming tone, "You run wild and harvest all resources that you desire. If you get tired, just let me know and I will help you pack up everything of worth in the dimension and hand it to you." "Elder, what about your descendants?" Felix was left a bit speechless by his generosity, knowing that if he cleared the dimension of even royal gemstones, his descendants would be screwed for a very long time. What's the point of giving it to them? The dragon race won't be saved by a few royal gemstones. The only way to truly save them is by lifting the curse imposed on us by those beings. If you managed to truly end their reigns, a better future for my race would finally be on the horizon." Ancestor Immer smiled a little. No one could fault his reasoning as they knew that the dragon race had already lost most of its glory and authority with the death of Elder Dragon, and two of its most powerful clan heads. So, even if a genius like Domino appeared again, he would not be able to make much of a difference without their cultivation system returning to them. If it was like this, he might as well bet everything on Felix. "Much appreciated, Elder, truly." Felix bowed his head in gratitude. He understood that even if he concocted a new potion to help him absorb natural treasures more effectively, he would be needing an unfathomable amount to reach the 30th mark. It would help him gain at least 3 marks without using the potion if he was truly allowed to harvest all natural treasures in the Heavenly Garden. That's an amazing value when considering his current high mark. After he got his permission, Felix wasn't planning to waste time even though it ran slower here than in the outside universe. He switched his focus back to his main consciousness and called calmly, "Wendigo, Saurus, come out." Whoosh! Suddenly, from the shadows, two imposing figures emerged with an uncanny abruptness. Wendigo and Saurus, their eyes gleaming with unsettling intensity, stood before Felix, their presence commanding the attention of the entire dimension. They have also entered the dimensional pocket but remained hidden in the shadows, awaiting Felix's orders. Ancestor Ymir had noticed their presence, but since they came with Felix, he refrained from saying anything. "Your orders, Master?" "Split up and go search for natural treasures in the most dangerous and hidden areas in the dimension," Felix ordered. "If you need guidance, request it from Elder Ymir in my consciousness space." Felix didn't want to work out Elder Ymir too much, knowing that his energy was limited and each action he made in his dimension consumed a significant amount. He didn't want him to get forced into a slumber again like last time after he helped him with his training. "We have it covered." The Darkins nodded expressionlessly and then took off. Felix left his crystal house and noticed that his squad was already gathered around a newly created bonfire. Even Nemo had emerged from the Void Realm and was seen sitting on Candace's lap, sleeping peacefully. "We have been permitted to take all natural treasures in the dimension," Felix informed with a faint smile, "so, don't be impolite and harvest anything regardless of its grade. However, don't touch plants in the budding stage." 1561 A Heavenly Garden. "Everything? You sure about it?" Olivia asked with a surprised look. "Yep, just be careful and make sure to store everything properly," Felix mentioned. "You must share a real tight bond with the ancestral dragon," Selphie said while giving him an impressed look. Felix laughed a little and didn't divulge deeper into his relationship with Elder Ymir. "During the day, focus on your harvest, and when the night comes, I will put you in my illusion domain and bestow upon you the wisdom I to help you with your training." Noah nodded in understanding and straightway took off alone, having no plans to explore the pocket with their company. Felix ignored him and split his team. He placed Olivia and Selphie in a team while leaving Bodadai and Candace together. He planned on exploring alone with Nemo. Everyone was somewhat satisfied with this split and they began their journey too, leaving Felix and Nemo behind. Felix didn't need to tell them that he would be getting all of the natural treasures as they knew about it. No one complained or was bothered by this. Felix had already done so much for them and they were eager to pay him back in any way possible. Even Noah, who desperately desired to find new natural treasures for consumption to increase his strength, wasn't going to put himself before Felix. While his motives were pure, he was still going to benefit from helping Felix since he could replicate those treasures in his illusion domain and let him consume as many as his body could handle, or even turn them into potions to make the effects stronger. A blessing for anyone without illusion immunity. Some time later, deep within the heart of the mountain, Felix returned to the cave where he had first discovered the enigmatic dark moss. As he entered, the dim light filtering through the narrow opening cast eerie shadows upon the rocky walls. The air was cool and damp, carrying a faint earthy scent. To his amazement, his nose picked up on the familiar peculiar scent of the dark moss without needing to drink any enhancing potion. Felix trailed the scent until he reached a dead end. "I guess it has grown in another area," Felix thought while touching the thick rocky wall. "It seems like it's one of its conditions for growth is closed mountain pockets." Without the hassle of digging a big path like before, Felix placed a finger on the wall and materialized a small driller with destruction mist. Then, he created a thin nickel-sized long hole that extended into the pocket. Next, he transmitted himself into flowing water and went inside the hole. In less than a split second, his form manifested back to a human on the other side. Nemo copied Felix's action and popped off on his shoulders. Not bothered by the lack of light, Felix scanned around and found that the dark moss had regrown in patches along the walls of the cave. Its tendrils, now pulsating with a faint, ominous energy, stretched out like veins seeking sustenance. With nimble fingers, he delicately harvested the dark moss, being cautious not to disturb the fragile balance of this mysterious place. Last time he had made a huge mess to enter the cave and it had affected its growth area. Fortunately, the dimensional pocket was ever-changing, allowing a similar location to emerge that fulfilled the conditions. After he was done, Felix exited in the same manner and filled up the hole again. "Elder, can you point me towards the areas richest with elemental energy?" Felix requested, not wanting to go completely blind. "Sure, situated 700 kilometers to the east, you will discover a small pink puddle that is surrounded by numerous hives of black wasps. On top of the puddle, you will find a family of lotuses. Ancestor Ymir shared, they are emitting strong charm elemental energy. Much appreciated." Felix transformed into a lightning bolt and zoomed past half of the forest in less than a millisecond before popping off into his form after arriving at his destination. He looked below him and noticed a small, seemingly innocent pink puddle hidden amongst the trees. With his impeccable vision, he was easily able to spot a hive of giant, ominous black wasps, camouflaging perfectly on the trees. When he got close, their buzzing filled the air with a threatening hum, and their presence sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest souls. Undeterred, Felix approached the puddle while having his spiritual pressure forming an invisible shield around him, keeping the wasps at bay. The wasps were left frozen in midair as they watched the intruder encroach on their trap mechanism like nothing. "Interesting, I have never seen such a lotus before," Felix uttered with a look of fascination after picking a bunch of delicate multicolored lotus flowers from the shimmering pink puddle. Each petal seemed to emit a soft, soothing glow, contrasting sharply with the foreboding surroundings. Felix examined the flowers closely, his keen senses sensed that the flowers were releasing an invisible pinkish charm mist. His mental defenses were indestructible, plus, he possessed both illusion and lust immunity, making him the worst enemy of this lotus. As he delved into the lotus flower's energy, he checked for any signs that would help him determine its grade better. "Its energy level is enough to put it in the S-grade zone, but unless I studied its true effects, I wouldn't know for sure." Felix smiled, "For now, let's name it Charming Lotus." If Asna was around, she would have rolled her eyes at his terrible naming sense that seemed to never approve. He put the grown lotuses into singular containers and left the smaller ones for future generations. Then, he requested the second area from Elder Ymir and continued on his expedition mission. With his movement speed, overwhelming strength, perfect guidance from Elder Ymir, and great understanding of botany, Felix was able to collect more than 40 types of natural treasures above A grade in less than an hour. There were even a couple of S and SS graded natural treasures mixed in them. Obviously, the majority were unknown, which meant his grading wasn't precise, but still, it was an amazing treasure for the kind of trouble he went through. Other explorers would have to go through death trials, lose many of their companions, and still, either come empty-handed or find A grade or less natural treasures. Just like what happened to Felix's expedition mission in the Shurima temple, yet, here he was, picking the greatest treasures left and right without breaking a sweat. All because he had the F***CKU type of strength. Meanwhile, the other groups were also pulling their weight just fine as none of them was considered a weakling. When nighttime arrived and everyone returned to the camp and beamed all the harvested natural treasures near the bonfire, even the tenants were startled by the number of A and grades. "Is it me or did your pocket dimension get even richer?" Thor wondered. "Did it? I never bothered to check." Ancestor Ymir replied with a carefree tone. "It's not that, we have gotten a decent collection only because he was guiding them towards the best areas in the dimension." Lady Sphinx explained, "In a couple of days or even less, you will start to notice a significant decline in their quality." "I thought so too." Felix approved. This was the reason Felix wasn't too pleased with their loot. He understood that if they visited all the best possible locations and they still hadn't found another SSS and natural treasure here, then God knows how difficult it would be in the outside universe. To concoct a potion regardless of its rank, 3 materials were required at the bare minimum, so, he could never be satisfied with these results. Let's hope that our fortune will turn around tomorrow. Felix murmured hopefully. 1562 failing at seed collection. Unfortunately, after weeks of meticulous exploration within the heavenly garden, Felix and his companions found themselves still without a single SSS natural treasure. They had scoured every corner, climbed the tallest trees, and waded through the clearest streams, hoping to discover an elusive SSS and natural treasure. Yet, despite their unwavering determination and Ancestor Ymir's guidance, they had come up empty-handed. Frustration and disappointment were etched across Felix's face as he sat on top of a mountain summit with Nemo lying on his head. We have gathered more than 10,000 natural treasures with grades B and A being the majority. This should be enough to push past a mark or 2 if I was lucky. While those results were extremely promising, Felix truly hoped to locate another SSS natural treasure. Alas, they had gone almost through the entire dimensional pocket, but to no avail. The only places left were the ones lacking in elemental energy like the depth of the underground. It's expected that the majority of SSS natural treasures are based on rare elements and have their unique mystical areas in some corners of the universe. Lady Sphinx shared, just because this place is rich with elemental energy, doesn't mean it qualifies to host multiple SSS natural treasures. Even the dark moss's existence is peculiar in itself as it defied those laws. I guess you are right, I have been expecting too much. Felix smiled. I should feel gratified with our current loot, it sure helped a lot with breeding new plants. In the past weeks, Felix had focused on 2 things in his free time, his training and cross-breeding new plants under his master's guidance. The books he had read about the field had helped him greatly, allowing him to kick off his botany journey smoothly. He struggled a bit at the start, but now, he was able to crossbreed new plants after a thorough analysis of their structure, history, species, evolutionary paths, and the list goes on. While it hasn't been a long time, I feel like I am ready to start crossbreeding SS and natural treasures, Felix informed. You haven't even succeeded in crossbreeding a SS natural treasure and you want to jump to SSS? Lady Sphinx said calmly. Well, I don't think it's worth doing. Felix remarked, the dark reaction occurs only in SS and crossbred natural treasures and I feel like it's best to start getting to deal with it early. As you wish. Lady Sphinx was usually stricter with her training schedule, but she would never stop Felix from running at his own pace at this stage of his life. If he failed, he could always return to the schedule. As always, reach out when you face a wall. Felix nodded in understanding and swiftly switched his focus to his clone inside the UVR. Since the UVR's connection wasn't in the dimensional pocket, he had to rely on a wisp he left behind in a crystal clone in his eternal Nautilus. In a secluded corner of his illusionary lush garden, Felix meticulously selected 2 SS natural treasures. The anticipation hung in the air as he carefully brought the parent plants closer together, their vibrant leaves and unique characteristics promising a new, extraordinary creation. With delicate precision, he attempted to coax the plants into producing seed, a key step in the crossbreeding process. He gently brushed their leaves together, encouraging them to release their pollen and ovules into the air. The plants responded, emitting a subtle, almost hesitant, exchange of their reproductive materials. Felix sped up the time, knowing after successful pollination, the seeds needed to develop on the female parent. They will typically mature within a few weeks to months, depending on the plant species. However, as Felix watched closely, it became apparent that something was amiss. The 2 natural treasures seemed incompatible, their genetic codes refusing to intertwine. Despite his best efforts, they failed to produce a single viable seed. It can't be. I have picked the most compatible SS-graded treasures I found in the dimension. Felix knitted his eyebrows in confusion, they should have at least produced a seed at minimum. Felix understood that by doing this, he lowered his chances of having an SSS-graded plant be born from those 2 treasures. That's because compatibility, while it would make crossbreeding easier, would also not create an evolutionary miracle. He did this to ensure a small win before facing the real challenge. This has worked just fine for other natural treasures. Am I missing something? Are there other conditions that have to be fulfilled? Felix held his chin thoughtfully. This was just the seed collection step, and Felix never paid much attention to it since he understood that as long as the parents were compatible genetically, a seed had to be born. He never ran any issue with lesser-graded natural treasures. I should first find out the reason for their inability to reproduce. Not wanting to turn to his master's help so soon, Felix decided to make some changes, which were usually done during the plant's growth. Seated at his makeshift laboratory table, Felix started jotting down notes in his holographic note while wearing a lab coat, resembling any other professional researcher. He knew he had to run a series of experiments, testing various factors that might affect the crossbreeding process. He needed to understand what made these two plants refuse to produce a seed together. First on his list was the soil. Felix planned to collect samples from different parts of his garden, each with its unique composition, and see if the parent plants would respond differently. He needed to determine whether the soil's pH, nutrient content, or microbial composition played a role. Next, he considered the environment. Felix would move some of the parent plants to different areas of his garden, exposing them to varying amounts of sunlight, humidity levels, and temperature fluctuations. He wondered if these elements influenced the success of pollination. Weather and time differences would also be crucial variables. Felix decided to document the climate conditions during each pollination attempt and noted the time of day to see if patterns emerged. Perhaps there was a specific climate condition or time frame that triggered successful seed production. Seasons would undoubtedly play a role too. Fortunately, he was like a game master in a server, allowing him to possess all the cheats any researcher would kill to obtain. So, Felix experimented on the plants from the bloom of spring to the harshness of winter in less than a minute between seasons. Unfortunately, the seasons experiment produced no results and was shelved. Time went by, and before long a month passed since Felix started his experiments. I have tried almost everything to make those two work. If only their genes were incompatible, I would have dropped them. Felix kept scratching his head with a frustrated look, not feeling this desperate for a long time. He knew that his journey to create an SSS and plant variety would be long and filled with challenges, but he didn't expect that he would be stuck in the seed collection stage. He had yet to even deal with the growth phase and the dark reaction. "Aren't you going to give him a hand?" Thor inquired while glancing at Lady Sphinx. "He didn't ask, and I doubt he will." Lady Sphinx replied indifferently while reading a book. The moment she said this, Felix stood up from his spinning chair and walked back to the laboratory with a determined expression. "I can't be defeated by this, there has to be something I am missing." "Has to be?" Felix popped off his wisdom eyes and manifested all the unsuccessful experiences he run through before him into screens. Then, he started scanning and analyzing anything out of interest, hoping to find the absent link in his past mistakes. 1563 Working as a unit, as a hive, as one mind. Felix spent countless hours scouring through the finest details in his experiments, not skipping a single thing. With his wisdom eye in play and peak concentration, Felix finally spotted the missing link. "Is this?" It was a small detail, almost inconspicuous amidst the wealth of information he had gathered. In one of his experiments, he moved a pair of parent plants to a different location within his garden. These plants had been subjected to increased X10 sunlight during the afternoon hours. As Felix reviewed his observations, he noticed that the plants exposed to the afternoon sunlight had exhibited a subtle change in their physiology. Their leaves had tilted slightly towards the sun, and their flowers had opened wider during those hours. "This is it." Felix realized that the angle and intensity of sunlight played a crucial role in the pollination process of these particular plants. It wasn't just about the standard factors like soil, environment, or weather. It was the specific alignment of the sun during pollination that triggered seed production. With newfound excitement, Felix set to work immediately. He carefully marked the exact position of the sun during the successful pollinations, using a sundial and meticulously noting the angles. He also began to track the changing position of the sun throughout the day, paying close attention to the afternoon hours when his breakthrough had occurred. As he conducted a series of focused experiments, controlling the angle and duration of sunlight exposure, Felix watched in anticipation. And then, it happened. The two parent plants produced a single, small, but promising seed. Haha, I did it! Felix laughed excitedly while eyeing the seed on his palm. It was the result of his dedication, patience, and the tiny but crucial detail he had uncovered. Now, you can start the crossbreeding. Lady Sphinx remarked with a faint smile. Felix rubbed his hair with a foolish look, knowing that he was getting excited over merely succeeding in the simplest step. The journey was far from over and it would only get harder. Without wasting time, Felix manifested multiple seeds in the same manner until he had a couple of thousands. Then, he started planting them in isolated see-through glass gardens. Each small garden had a different soil, different time acceleration, different shade of light, different watering systems, elemental energy levels, and the list goes on and on and on. There were like 1,000 experiments running simultaneously, and Felix understood that even with such massive quantity, it wasn't guaranteed to find the proper growth conditions for the seed. This is the true burial ground of botanists. While your illusionary garden made everything 100 times easier, you have to be focused and pay attention to the smallest details for each experiment. Lady Sphinx advised, if you missed even a single detail, it might be the key to whether the plant will become an SSS or not. I understand, I am planning on putting multiple clones on watch duty. Felix nodded with a serious expression. Good, finish what I have started. Lady Sphinx had never succeeded in crossbreeding an SSS and natural treasure, and it was all because she didn't have Felix's cheat codes. Even with the UVR's assistance, she was still forced to wait patiently for centuries, millennia, and sometimes even hundreds of thousands of years before the plant failed due to some tiny issue. This would force her to restart the entire experiment from the top. Now, Felix had the chance to surpass Lady Sphinx in her field, and he had no plans to disappoint her. Day after day, Felix observed the plants closely, waiting for that elusive moment when the seed would sprout into a bud. But as the days turned into weeks, it became painfully clear that the majority of his experiments were failing. The seeds simply refused to germinate, despite the meticulous attention he had given to every detail. Felix's frustration grew, and he found himself constantly adjusting conditions and restarting experiments in search of that magical combination. However, persistence was one of Felix's defining traits. On one particular attempt, after countless failures, 3 buds finally emerged. Each one was distinct, not only in appearance but also in the subtle energies they exuded. One was vibrant green, another had a fiery red hue, and the third had a calm and serene blue aura. 3 variations. Let's go, this seems more promising now. Excitement coursed through Felix as he carefully collected these 3 unique buds. He understood that each bud represented a different path of evolution for the plant. While all 3 of them could fail eventually, it also meant that he could get 3 different types of SSS natural treasures at the end. There might be other variations, I shouldn't give up on the rest of the seeds. Felix knew that while progress had been made, there were still countless possibilities to explore. Each seed held the potential for something remarkable, and he was committed to unlocking their hidden potential, one experiment at a time. So, he made some changes to their growth conditions and moved his focus to the 3 buds. He moved his hand once and created another garden with hundreds of seeds provided with the same conditions as the 3 budding seeds. This helped him branch out more on his experiments again, putting each budding seed in a different environment and setting. If only Isna could see this. Hormungandr smiled gently as he watched hundreds of versions of Felix, working as a unit, as a hive, as one mind, for the sake of creating a single SSS natural treasure. This wasn't all, as there were many other clones on duty focusing on SS natural treasures, running experiments on them to invoke their evolution into SSS natural treasures without needing crossbreeding. Obviously, he had to be a great geneticist to run such experiments since they require genetic modifications. Fortunately, he left a clone to study genetic-related books left to him by his master in the past weeks, and he also received some guidance. So, he was running 3 types of fields in alchemy simultaneously, which in turn was more than enough to name him as an alchemist like his master. All of this insane hard work was to create a mere single recipe, which wasn't even guaranteed to work. Yet, Felix never allowed such thoughts to ruin his resolve. As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, and before long, a whole 5 years passed in the dimensional pocket. Yet, Felix's determination remained unwavering. He had meticulously run close to 1 million experiments. From this unimaginable number of experiments, a small plant had finally yielded the result he had longed for. Its slender stem stood proudly, bearing a single, exquisite flower with cubic petals that seemed to contain stars within their crystalline facets. Each petal glimmered with a soft, ethereal light, casting a gentle, otherworldly glow in the room. Surrounding the plant, a dense aura of gravity-related elemental energy pulsed with newfound life. The atmosphere seemed to ripple with the power of this remarkable creation, as if the very laws of nature had altered to accommodate its existence. I created this. Felix stood before the flower, his eyes filled with awe and appreciation. He marveled at the beauty and uniqueness of this botanical wonder he had nurtured through countless trials and experiments. As he gazed upon the cubic petals with stars twinkling within, Felix knew that he had achieved something truly extraordinary. He had surpassed Lady Sphinx in her field, reaching a height she never came close to. He knew that this was still not considered a fully grown SSS natural treasure, since he had yet to even deal with the dark reaction and the challenges that come from its growth to ripeness. Still, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment and fulfillment wash over him, knowing that his endeavors had borne fruit and passed the most difficult obstacle in crossbreeding. "What are you going to title it?" Lady Sphinx asked with a faint pleased smile. Felix gazed at the flower, his eyes filled with wonder and admiration, and then, with a soft, poetic murmur, he spoke a sentence that resonated with the essence of his woman. "Asnalia's rose, your radiance in bloom, a starlit dream in every petal's twinkle." With those words, he named the exceptional plant that had defied the odds and blossomed into a symbol of his enduring love and dedication, the Asnalia's rose. In response to his name, Asnalia rose's stars twinkled brilliantly for a moment before becoming dim, seemingly accepting the title with grace. 1564 Finding inspiration. "I am sure she would have loved it if she was here," Thor remarked. Felix's lips broke into a faint loving smile while envisioning Asna in the rose petals. Even when his emotions were being slowly corrupted by evil energy, his love for Asna wasn't touched in the slightest. The dark reaction usually manifests in the first years after the plant closes to ripeness. Felix soon refocused on his mission, with time acceleration. "I believe it will happen about now." The instant Felix uttered the last word, a sudden darkness seemed to cloud the air around the exquisite flower. The cubic petals, once adorned with stars, began to wither and warp as a sinister force attacked its DNA. The dark reaction was at play, breaking apart the delicate genetic structure of the flower and threatening to consume its essence. "Not in my watch." With quick reflexes, Felix cancelled the time acceleration and dove into the plant's DNA universe with his quantum vision. Then, he extended his spiritual pressure like a protective shield around the affected DNA pieces, using his overbearing spiritual prowess to erase the fused dark substance. When he was done, the DNA strings were left broken apart like 2 pieces of a twig. Felix was already told that reconstructing the DNA was just as important as getting rid of the dark substance. So, he channeled his sacred water healing ability and used tiny droplets of healing water around broken DNA string, gently caressing its strands and accelerating their reconstruction. The petals began to regain their cubic shape, and the stars within them slowly twinkled back to life. It may not seem like it, but it was a tense and difficult battle as the dark substance targeted millions of DNA strings, forcing Felix to keep on his toes the entire time. Fortunately, unlike the dark reaction in the potion concoction, the dark substance merely fused with the DNA and spread slowly, allowing Felix to get rid of them before they do more damage. Will they ever stop appearing? Candace said with a bothered tone at the sight of the dark substance multiplying non-stop. No, Lady Sphinx answered, they will keep attacking the flower until it becomes ripe. This usually takes decades to centuries or even much longer, depending on the plant's type. Damn, this is the same as being held hostage. Candace cursed. She realized that Felix would need to put a decent clone with a significant amount of mental energy on watch duty or even multiple ones and put them on rotation if he wanted to keep an eye on the dark substance's invasion without affecting his lifestyle. This was exactly what Felix planned to do after he got decent training on dealing with the dark substance, so his clones wouldn't fail him. Obviously, it wouldn't matter much if his clones failed since this was still happening in the UVR and he wouldn't be getting anything from this but the experience for the real deal. After spending a couple of days wrestling against the dark reaction, Felix finally passed the baton to his clones and let them have at it. No wonder you still want to find a better method to completely get rid of the dark reaction. Felix expressed in irritation to his master, that was the most bothersome experience I had. I can't imagine doing this for years, don't even mention decades or more. You will get used to it. Lady Sphinx chuckled a little. I doubt it. Felix cracked his neck as he teleported outside of the garden at last, wanting to take a break from botany and focus on other matters. Dealing with the dark reaction of the potion concoction was his priority at the moment. After 5 years his clone had unfortunately failed to have a decent understanding of the dark reaction to mark it or create a soul-based poison to get rid of it. This was the reason he was forced to rely on his mental energy as his main weapon. Is my master's method the only one available? Felix sat with his thoughts and a deep frown, feeling like he could do better than that with his current arsenal of abilities and powers. Your clone has focused mostly on understanding the dark reaction and failed. It's best to make him spend time learning Sphinx's method while you focus on coming up with a different method if possible. Thor advised, this way, you will always have a backup plan. That's a good plan. Felix nodded in appreciation and acted on the suggestion immediately. While Lady Sphinx was teaching his clone how to create microscopic armies and control them like her, he was wrecking his brain for a different idea. Unfortunately, he wasn't so lucky this time and he came out empty after spending more than a couple hours. Sigh, I need some fresh air. Felix decided to drop the matter for now and switch his focus back to his main body in the dimensional pocket, hoping for some inspiration. He walked out of the camp, not wanting to bother his friends, who were training inside their personal illusion domains training zones. For the past 5 years, they had been training every night in illusion domains with time being accelerated moderately. He also bestowed upon them copies of natural treasures and even copies of new potions he created from them. With the wisdom I added to the mix, most of them had gone through some positive changes. Felix also learned the new time spells created by Selfie in his free time and other spatial spells, wanting to reach a level where he could master omnipotent spells. He wasn't just preparing his strength against Nemo's alter ego, but also his elemental prowess. After walking for a while, Felix jumped on a tree and sat on a branch. He gazed into the sunrise peacefully, emptying his mind from his experiments, research, and stressful work. As Felix observed the intricate dance of nature unfolding before him, a sense of peace and relief washed over him. I really needed this. He let out a long exhale as he leaned against the tree trunk and closed his eyes shut, wanting to take a quick nap. Chirp chirp. However, he was forced to open his eyes after hearing bird noise coming from a nearby tree. He glanced at it and almost instantly, he spotted the small noisy black bird through the murmur of leaves and branches. High above, a majestic, golden falcon soared through the cerulean sky, its keen eyes locked onto the unsuspecting prey below. The falcon's killing intent, while soft, Felix picked on it and made him lift his head and glance at it. The circle of life, the predator and the prey, each playing their roles in the delicate balance of nature. Felix murmured in his mind for a moment before his eyes swiftly focused on another observer nearby. Coiled amidst the foliage, a camouflaged snake lay in wait, its body perfectly still, its eyes fixated on the small bird and the eggs in its nest. It was clear that the snake was biding its time, waiting for the opportune moment to strike and claim both the bird and eggs, having no clue that another predator was gunning for its prey. Who is going to get it? Felix watched the showdown in intrigue, captured by this little life and death drama happening before him. Here it comes. Suddenly, the falcon changed its trajectory and dove head first into the tree, slicing apart branches and leaves with its razor-sharp feathers. Both the small bird and the snake sensed the immediate danger, knowing that they were both prey to the falcon. Still, the snake seemed like it had no plans to stay in safety and let the falcon steal its prey. It lunged at the nest, wanting to bite one egg before bailing out. Greedy, but will it hey? Before Felix could finish the rest of his sentence, he was left stunned by what happened next. The small bird neither waited for the snake nor the falcon to reach its danger zone. It unveiled its dark wings around its nest and then disappeared into the shadow of the tree, leaving both predators lunging at each other. The falcon immediately switched its target to the snake and dug its claws into its flesh before carrying it into the sky. Just as it was about to leave Felix's vision, the snake exploded into poisonous acidic mist, causing the falcon's flesh and feathers to melt off and die with it. The hell is this place? Felix was left utterly speechless at the sight of the same little bird emerging from the same shadow with its nest, appearing like nothing happened. Haha, wait a second. Just as he was about to chuckle at his failed prediction, he couldn't help but draw a parallel to his struggles with the dark reaction to this exact scenario. He had been waiting, like the snake or the falcon, for the perfect moment to intervene and protect the concoction from the explosive attack of the dark reaction. However, as he observed the events before him, a realization dawned on Felix. Why am I waiting for the dark reaction to invade? I have a whole minute to save mixture before the invasion could even take place. Felix's eyes widened the more he thought about this notion. It's impossible in accomplishing this in rank 5 and below potions, but for some reason, the dark reaction takes a long time to manifest in rank 6 potions. This is the key to my success. What are you talking about? Thor raised an eyebrow in surprise. I believe Lady Sphinx must have already tried to do the same. I did try it, but I didn't have the tools to pull it off. Lady Sphinx smiled faintly. On the other hand, you boy has the best tool to make it work. Master, you really think it will work? Felix exclaimed in excitement after realizing that his mentor had deciphered his new idea from the little details. There is only one way to find it. Lady Sphinx said calmly, return to the lab. 1565 Electromagnetic Field Method. In the hushed confines of his laboratory, surrounded by vials of exotic ingredients and intricate apparatuses, Felix stood before his concoction table, eager to test his latest breakthrough. But before then, he reached out to his master Thor. Master, what do you think about creating a minimized electromagnetic field across the atomic world of the mixture and using it to manipulate the charged electrons and protons? Felix spoke with a tint of excitement. Will it be possible to hasten the molecules breaking apart? So, this is your plan? Thor chuckled. Possible? I have never tried it before since my vision can't reach the atomic world, but I am certain it's more than doable. Interesting, you are attempting to hasten the integration process of the mixture, allowing it to finish in the 1-minute waiting time before the dark reaction could appear. Not bad at all. Elder Kraken praised Felix for coming up with such an ingenious method. It's indeed a great idea, and if you pull it off, you will guarantee to have 100% success chance every time. Candace clapped happily. Wait, won't this affect the potion's stability, causing it to fail? Fenrir questioned. Lady Sphinx was the one answering him. It doesn't affect it at all. Felix will be merely accelerating a natural process, reducing the time it takes for it to finish. He won't be adding materials or something to the mix. Usually, this would be useless in Felix's case when dealing with rank 5 and lower potions, since he was already at a level where he could guarantee any potion he concocted to be 100%. That's because he had enough mental power to create a massive barrier around the entire mixture, making it impossible for the dark reaction to do anything. However, the dark reaction of rank 6 potions appeared explosively and randomly everywhere, which made this method useless. Fortunately, the saving grace was that 1 minute of peacefulness before the invasion, and Felix was going to take advantage of it. There is only one way to truly know for sure. Felix ended their speculations by concocting God's pillar and using his quantum vision to enter its mixture's atomic world. Then, he created a minimized electromagnetic field within the atomic world of the potion's mixture, spreading it to a decent size. He didn't want to go all out from the start. The moment the field manifested, it began to exert its influence on the charged protons and electrons within the mixture's molecules as he expected. However, before he could be joyful, the atomic world was thrown into chaos. Protons and electrons, which were previously in stable orbits around atomic nuclei, started to move erratically, their trajectories disrupted by the field's influence. Bonds between atoms within the molecules strained and broke as the particles within them went haywire. The once stable mixture rapidly descended into ruination as molecules collided and merged haphazardly, and the entire potion's atomic world seemed to collapse in on itself. It was as if a storm had been unleashed within the mixture, causing turmoil at the atomic level. Felix watched in dismay at the falling apart mixture, destroying it before the dark reaction could even make a move. After the mixture collapsed, he pulled back with a solemn look. "Looks like this isn't going to be easy," he said. "It's expected. The electromagnetic field needs to be powerful enough to manipulate the neutrons of the molecules but gentle enough not to disrupt the charged electrons and protons unless you intended to do so. I guess I have to tune it down." Felix nodded in understanding. Without further ado, Felix began a new pursuit to perfect the electromagnetic field within the potion's mixture. Night after night, he tirelessly ran experiments, adjusting the field's intensity with meticulous precision. Felix could feel the molecules in the mixture responding to the electromagnetic forces he exerted, their behavior changing with each adjustment. One trial after another passed by, and Felix noted the subtle shifts in the mixture's behavior. Sometimes, the molecules reacted too violently, causing the entire concoction to destabilize. Other times, the field was too weak to influence the neutrons effectively. But Felix was undeterred. He analyzed the data meticulously, fine-tuning his approach with each iteration. And then, after countless trials, it happened. Felix executed the experiment, and the electromagnetic field fell within the perfect range. The neutrons of the molecules responded, breaking apart and merging seamlessly, while the protons and electrons remained undisturbed unless he chose otherwise. Still, Felix wasn't planning to celebrate yet, as this merely gave him the precise control he needed to manipulate the molecules during the potion concoction. Now, he had to manually break apart those molecules and let them merge in less than a minute, which was 100 times more daunting task than this. "Wish me luck." Felix took a deep breath and then zoomed in on the potion's mixture until he joined its atomic world. Next, he manifested the same electromagnetic field, but this time, it seemed less intense and the molecules remained unaffected by it. "Let's start small." Felix bit his lower lip in concentration as he focused on a bundle of colored molecules mashed against each other. Since the concoction process already automatically broke apart molecules and merged them to create new ones, Felix didn't need to manually oversee each molecule. The only thing he needed to do was accelerate the process of breaking the molecules, using a process called electrolysis. In electrolysis, an electric current, which created an electromagnetic field, was used to drive a chemical reaction, such as the splitting of water into hydrogen and oxygen gases. But in this case, it would be used to split other elements in the mixture and let them merge naturally. This was exactly what Felix did to the small bundle of molecules. He sent an electrical current through the molecules, which forced their bond to break apart due to the disturbance caused by the charged proton and electron. After the bonds were shattered, the chemical mixture did its thing and erected a chemical reaction, causing those broken molecules to bond into different shapes. What Felix did was happening across the entire atomic world, the only difference was that he made it a couple of seconds faster. He, will you look at me now, influencing direct chemical reactions. I sure have come a long way. Felix grinned in delight at the sight of his efforts paying off at last. Sure, he simply helped a few molecules from probably 100 decillions or even more, but understood that with practice, repetition, and hard work, he would absolutely turn this manual work into an automatic one. You only have a minute, so, you must be quick, efficient, and most importantly precise. Lady Sphinx smiled, but if you pulled it off, I will tell you this, you will never struggle with another potion in your life. That's exactly what I want. Felix smirked, I may need to find another method to deal with the undesirable reaction in crossbreeding, but at least in potions, I can say to have finally mastered the field. It wasn't far-fetched to call him a master potioner in every sense after concocting a rank 6 potion, which honestly speaking would shock the entire witch empire. A mortal surpassed and still perfected the technique faster than them even when they had millions of years as a head start. 1566 Time for departure. 2 years later. In a dimly lit laboratory, Felix stood over a concoction that had become the center of his obsession. The potion mixture, bubbling away in an ornate cauldron, held the key to unlocking his rank 6 potions mastery. For 2 long years, he had meticulously trained, honing his control over electromagnetic fields. His brow furrowed in concentration as he focused his electromagnetic field on the atomic world of the potion. The moment his field interacted with the molecules, they began to respond. Chemical reactions that would typically take a couple of seconds were now occurring in a matter of milliseconds. Bonds broke and reformed in a mesmerizing dance of atomic transformation as an incalculable number of snake-like electrical charges roamed through the mixture. This is it, I can feel it. Felix's heart raced with excitement as he could feel the mixture's chemical reactions were going to be concluded in less than a minute due to his intervention. 30%, 50%, 60%, 80%. The completion rate kept jumping rapidly as the seconds went by. After 55 seconds hit the mark, the completion rate was at 99%, and Felix doubled down on his focus and effort for the last 1%, not wanting to give up even that to the dark reaction. When those 5 seconds concluded and the first signs of the dark reaction was about to merge, the cauldron, which had been bubbling and churning, suddenly stilled. It seemed as though the very air in the laboratory held its breath in anticipation. Then, it happened. Boom! The lid of the cauldron was blown off with a gentle force, and from within, a radiant golden light poured forth, illuminating the entire laboratory. The divine light was ethereal, casting intricate patterns of shimmering brilliance across the walls. It danced and swirled like a celestial ballet, casting an otherworldly glow that bathed the room in a warm and inviting aura. I did it, at last, I did it. Felix disengaged from the atomic world and watched this celestial display with a captivated expression, feeling like he didn't just make a potion, but a divine elixir. A tantalizing scent wafted through the laboratory, carried on the wings of the divine light. Felix couldn't help but close his eyes and take in a deep breath, savoring the scent that filled the room. It was a reminder of the incredible journey he had undertaken, the trials and tribulations he had faced, and the knowledge he had gained. And now, the culmination of his efforts stood before him in the form of the God's Pillar, a potion of unparalleled strength and potential. Congratulations! Candace cheered immediately in his mind, clapping her hands in delight and excitement. That's my boy! Thor smirked, using my lightning manipulation in ways even I have never explored. He has just surpassed Sphinx in crossbreeding and now reached her level in potion mixture while also surpassing Thor in his field. Elder Kraken chuckled, "It won't be long before you won't have anything to teach him. I can't wait for that day." Hormungandr smiled with a pleased look. All great masters wish for their students to surpass them and reach heights they could have never dreamed of. Felix was close to the point in his life where his masters could only help him out with pieces of advice. "You are flattering me, I still have a long way to go," Felix replied humbly. Even when his spiritual pressure was already ahead of them and he could take down all of them at once, Felix would never have the nerve to look down on his masters disrespectfully by ignoring their teachings. He had reached this far only because of this attitude and he had no interest in changing it now. His masters observed his diligence with a silent sense of satisfaction and pride. Some time later, Felix could be seen sitting in front of the cauldron while holding the 3 celestial gods' pillar potions. "Now, I just need to find the missing key ingredients or crossbreed them somehow to concoct it for real," Felix uttered while juggling the potions in one hand. The sense of accomplishment had faded away quite fast after remembering that all of this was a mere illusion and if he didn't find the required materials, he might never concoct it in real life. If it was like that, there was nothing to feel accomplished. "I think it's time to leave the dimensional pocket. I have to start my exploration across the universe and also focus on devouring deserted planets' purities," Felix decided. "I think so too," Candace agreed. "We have already uprooted the dimensional pocket with Elder Immer's help. There is nothing much more to do here." Felix nodded in approval and requested that she inform his friends about it and prepare for departure. "Elder Immer, is it really not possible for you to join us? If everything went right and I entered the Eternal Kingdom, you will be missing a great spectatorship," Felix stressed, wanting the ancestral dragon to remain within his consciousness space. He had only seen goodness from him and Felix didn't want him to stay here all alone. Especially, when he probably wouldn't be visiting him ever again. After all, if he defeated Nemo's alter ego, he would ascend to the Eternal Kingdom, and if not, well, he would be dead, this time, probably for real with his soul being erased. "As much as I want that, unfortunately, I must not leave this place." Elder Immer smiled kindly, "It's my only way to atone for my crimes and help my wrongly harmed descendants. Plus, if I leave, the dimensional pocket will be closed forever and my offspring will receive another hit to their identity." Dragon's pride was just as powerful and irritating as the ancient dragons possessed it. The only difference was that the ancient dragons had the strength to defend their pride as they were considered only weaker than primogenitors then. But now? The dragons were surpassed by humans, the hive race, space worms, and the Watchers. Sure, those were merely powerful exceptions and didn't represent the true powers of their race, but the dragons didn't see it that way. All they saw was that after Elder Dragon died and Green/Black clan heads got demonized and perished, their high social status in the universe plummeted. For a race that possessed a cursed level of pride that was connected to their strength, this was extremely deadly to their identity. The only reason dragons were still holding strong was because of ancestral dragons' existence, acting like their pillar, and waiting for the day a dragon would arise and reclaim the title of the strongest being in the universe again. If he abandoned them too, it would be a shattering reality and Elder Immer didn't want his race to fall any lower. Felix and the tenants understood all of this from his last sentence. If it was possible to have Elder Immer send a wisp of his consciousness with them, then, it would have been great, but, they knew that was also impossible since his consciousness was linked to the dimensional pocket and could not escape it. The point his wisp left, it would perish since his entire existence was connected to the dimensional pocket and the same went to his wisps. "If you can't come with us, what if we remained here with you?" Felix suggested, still not giving up on bringing Elder Immer into his landlord's payroll. "What do you mean? I can leave a crystal clone here with a wisp of my consciousness." Felix smiled, "I will use the consciousness mirror link technique, which will allow you to stay connected to us always. What about your mental energy consumption?" "It's nothing of a concern," Felix assured him, "my mental energy capacity and recovery are so high, I can afford 100 clones simultaneously without worrying about exhausting it. Felix's mental energy already surpassed Lady Sphinx, and she was doing this with great ease for a very long time. It was all about finding the sweet spot of recovering what was lost of the mental energy before it could cause any problems for the user. Elder Ymir thought about it for a point before nodding his head with a wrinkly crackle, making his face resemble an old turtle. If it's not too much of a hassle, then, I will gladly accept your offer. That's what we like to hear. Thor laughed thunderously as he lifted his wine jar in the air. Welcome to the family, old geezer, cheers. 1567 worth it. A couple of hours later, Felix and his companions bid farewell to the ancestral dragon dimension and set out on their journey toward the Dwarven Empire, eager to mine elemental minerals and continue their adventures. The dimensional pocket was rich with natural treasures, but it didn't possess many elemental minerals. The only place in the entire universe with a massive abundance of said riches was the Dwarven Empire. When it came to decent graded elemental minerals, Miriam collected them for Felix using her massive influence on the Empire's upper echelon. However, for the ultra-rare minerals, there were only two ways to find them. Either the Dwarven Royal Treasury or mine them from the depths of the most dangerous places in the universe. Are you planning to borrow again? Candace asked with a faint giggle. You make it sound bad. Felix gave her an annoyed look. I am a man of my word and I am heading there to return the nether steel as I promised. An illusion version of it, you mean? Potato, potato. Felix defended his stance without an ounce of shame. No one will know the difference and they can use it like the real deal once they decide on the artifact. While at it, might as well take all rare minerals from their treasury and replace them with illusionary versions, Thor suggested. Master is surely full of wonderful ideas. Felix grinned. Thor chuckled, knowing that Felix was already thinking about doing it and he merely gave him an excuse to accept it. Most of the tenants rolled their eyes at his attempt to maintain his shame, not caring about judging him over stealing the dwarves' royal treasury. 3 weeks later, the eternal Nautilus had stopped near a giant green-colored planet with oceans and thick forests across its entire surface. It barely had snow mountains, volcanoes, deserts, and such. It was just brimming with life, but at the same time, it didn't. No intelligent life on it, Felix remarked calmly while studying the analyzed data of the planet. While the planet seemed full of life, it was also loaded with toxic and poisonous mist, making it impossible for many creatures to be born in its environment and adapt to it. Even the oceans were poisonous, making only the plant kingdom dominate the planet's ecosystem. Is this our next destination? Olivia asked curiously. It's doubtful that we will find anything of worth in it, but it's better to be safe than sorry. Felix said, we will spend the next month searching for rare natural treasures. Whether we find anything or not, we will take off. Selfie and the others nodded in understanding and prepared for the landing. Felix also joined the search party, hoping for his luck to turn around. Based on the books about the discovered SSS natural treasures, he knew that there was a plant called Sacred Forgiveness Tree, which has been discovered in areas rich with myriad plant kingdoms. That's because one of its sustainable conditions was absorbing nutrition like a parasite from different types of plants through its roots. Felix really hoped that he would find one as it was a key ingredient for a different useful rank 6 potion. Alas, the team had spent an entire month on the planet's surface, dealing with the poisonous atmosphere, killer plants, and some beasts here and there, yet, not many great natural treasures were collected. As for the Sacred Forgiveness Tree, it was nowhere to be found and Felix was certain that it didn't exist on this planet since 3 primogenitors-level beings were searching for it to no avail. In the end, Felix gave up on the search and everyone returned to the spaceship except him, Candace, Nimmo, and the Darkins. Felix ordered Queen AI to keep the spaceship on its trajectory while he prepared to devour the planet's purities. Let's see how much boost I will get from this. Felix had great hopes that it wouldn't be too disappointing due to the planet's abundance of life in it. Can we also share a bit? Saurus requested, my thoughts are getting clouded daily without eating an appropriate amount of purities. Likewise, we don't think we can last a couple more years without some purities in our system. Wendigo supported. I will bestow some upon you. Felix decided to help them out as he didn't want them to lose their insanity to the evil energy control. They had already struggled against hunger for 7 years, which was an unfathomable period when compared to other demons, who couldn't last a month without purities. Without further ado, Felix's form began to swell and expand, transcending the bounds of normalcy. Like a deity ascending, Felix grew in size, his body stretching and elongating, his features sharpening with the power that courses through him. The stars themselves seemed to dim as he expanded, his form eclipsing celestial bodies, becoming a colossal entity that dwarfs the green planet below. As Felix reached a size rivaling that of the green planet, his eyes, now glowing like twin suns, fixated on the planet. Then, slowly, with a motion that stirred cosmic winds and bent the very fabric of space, Felix extended his demonic hand toward the planet. His hand, now larger than continents, cast a shadow over the planet's surface. The atmosphere trembled under the proximity of such overwhelming power. Then, with a touch that was paradoxically gentle and cataclysmic, Felix placed his supermassive palm upon the planet. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of evil crimson energy rippled across the planet's surface, a display of raw power and his ominous intent. This boy always finds a way to be scarier. When will his limits end? The Darkins had sweat covering their forehead as they watched this unholy scene. They have dealt with Jurmai and Thor's size manipulation many times, but Felix's current form still planted a seed of utter fear in their hearts. Meanwhile, the planet, vibrant with life and purity, started to quiver under Felix's touch. The once bright greens of the forests and the deep blues of the oceans began to dim as if the very essence of life was being drained away. As this sinister process intensified, the planet underwent a heart-wrenching transformation. The lush landscapes withered, turning into barren wastes. The once crystal-clear waters of the oceans became stagnant and receded, leaving behind parched basins. The skies, once a painting of vibrant sunrises and sunsets, now hang heavy with a lifeless grey hue. The energy absorbed by Felix was not just the physical life force of the planet, but its spiritual essence as well. The planet's core, a once beating heart of energy and light, grew dimmer with each passing moment. Cracks began to appear across the surface, like the wrinkles of age on a dying elder, spreading and deepening as the planet's vitality was sapped away. Finally, the once green planet, a beacon of life and hope, was reduced to a grey, cracked rock, reminiscent of a world still in its birth stage, barren and lacking in the life it once harbored. As Felix gazed at the product of his strength-seeking obsession, his heart wasn't moved even once. I have killed a 5-billion-year-old planet in less than a minute. Felix gazed upon his demonic hand which still had a few rubbles on its surface. Then, he murmured, all of this to get 100 BF increase in strength, worth it. 1568 The thief strikes again. That's right. After Felix sensed his increase in strength, he noticed that it was so minuscule, that it translated to 100 BF or even less. In other words, he had to devour 1,000 planets to increase his strength by 10,000 BF. This was if he found perfect planets rich with life like this one but uninhabitable, which was extremely difficult in this universe. I can't say I haven't expected this. Lady Sphinx remarked calmly, evil energy feeds off life essence, but mostly off purities. So, if you want somewhat of a decent power enhancements, then you have to devour civilized planets. Yeah, I ain't doing that. Felix didn't spend even a second considering said option. In his eyes, if he went for this, he was nowhere better than Lucifer. There are 100 countless of planets in the universe. Felix remarked calmly, while it might take me decades or ages to hit a decent power up through this method, I am fine with it. Felix reduced his size back to normal and returned to the spaceship with his companions. He fed some of his purities into the Darkins, letting them have a breather from the irritating hunger thoughts at last. For the next months, Felix had killed more than 30 planets in total after spending some time searching them for either natural treasures or elemental minerals. Some planets have already been discovered while some were still unknown. He prioritized searching for the unknown ones, and if he found a small civilization in it or such, he let Olivia handle the Scullions' introduction to them. The only difference was that he didn't bother to force them to either join or die. If they weren't interested and they wanted to remain in their closed bubble from the universe, he let them be. The Alexander Kingdom hadn't given Earth such freedom of choice, and Felix always wondered how his life would have been if his planet was never discovered by them. Anyway, the enhancement gotten from those devoured planets wasn't enough to even hit 1000 BF. The situation was even worse, as some planets barely increased his strength by 20 BF. If it was another demon, he would most likely receive 100,000 if not more from a single planet. Still, Felix didn't change his mind at all and continued on this snail's slow and painful path until finally, his spaceship entered the Dwarven Empire's premises. You guys head towards Vorkara and check on the situation there. Give it a try and see if you can mine some of the Nuxino ingots. But, don't force it, the Nuxino's guardians aren't weaklings. Felix ordered. Vorkara was known for its massive deposits of a rare kind of elemental mineral called Nuxino ingots. These minerals were not ordinary, they pulsed with a raw, elemental power, coveted by many across the stars. However, the planet remained fairly untouched, as there were formidable monsters that dwelled in the planet's depths. These creatures, as enigmatic as they were powerful, fed on the elemental minerals, drawing strength and sustenance from the planet's very core. Their presence had turned the underground into a labyrinth of peril, with caverns echoing the roars of these subterranean behemoths. The dwarves had been trying to mine this planet for a very long time, but those monsters made it almost impossible. Even with the Alliance's armored forces and technology, nothing could be done against powerful monsters in their homeland. Since mass destruction weapons couldn't be used in areas marked for mining, the dwarves ended up publicly hiring mercenaries from all races to bring them Nuxino ingots. Alas, not many make it out alive with them. Where are you going? Selphie asked. I have some matters to manage in the capital. Felix answered, I will link up with you on Vorkara. Okay, good luck. Selphie wished with an innocent smile, having no clue that she was wishing Felix good luck on stealing the royal family's treasury. Thanks. Felix's eyelids twitched as he entered Candace's aircraft. In the deep heart of the Dwarven Empire, nestled amidst the labyrinthine stone halls and grand archways, lies the royal family's treasury. A bastion of wealth and artifacts, the treasury was a symbol of the Empire's power and history. On this fateful day, the air within these hallowed chambers stirred with an unnatural chill, heralding the arrival of an unexpected visitor. Felix walked inside the treasury from a void rift while making sure to coat himself with his spiritual pressure, making it impossible for any detection tool or ability to notice him. As he emerged from the void realm, the lavish opulence of the treasury encircled him. Walls lined with precious metals and gems, artifacts of immeasurable value and ancient lineage, all lie under his gaze. My nether steel is still there, Felix murmured after his eyes landed on a purplish metal cube sitting on the biggest platform in the treasury. You mean a piece of random metal painted purple? Candace giggled, taking a snaz job of keeping Felix's shamelessness in check. She also received Felix's special treatment as he ignored her completely, treating her jabs as air. Starfire opal, Etherium crystal, voidstone, damn, I didn't take a closer look before and my knowledge was lacking. But this place is surely loaded with amazing treasures. Felix remarked with an eyebrow raised in surprise. All of those mentioned elemental minerals were considered on the same rank as SSS natural treasures, and it was near impossible to find them on the outside without some godly luck. It's expected, this treasury is the dwarves' heart and soul. Lady Sphinx mentioned, any dwarves found such rare minerals, they gift them to the royal family for the sake of having someone worthy enough to craft an artifact with them. How noble and selfless! Felix shook his head while picking one of those treasures and putting it in his spatial card. Humans really need to do better and work out their greed. It's a shame we aren't morally upright like dwarves. This time, even the tenants were left speechless at his blatant shamelessness to lecture the human race while he was stealing the dwarves' property, for the second time. Such a shame. Oh, is this Terra Emerald? They even have 2 of them, he, lucky me. The tenants could only watch in utter silence as Felix skipped from one platform to another, not leaving a single elemental mineral behind. Fortunately for the dwarves, he had no use for the artifacts, so he left them in their places. After a few minutes, most of the platforms were now empty, having nothing of value to display, but not for long. Felix brought his hands together and closed his eyes, and then he cast small bubbles of illusion domains on top of those platforms. Next, the same rare elemental minerals manifested and resembled the real deal by 100%, he used this method to avoid wasting his illusion energy. Well, they may not be able to use them for now, but I promise that I will give them the rest of their details after analyzing them. Felix gave his word to the treasury yet again. What if you died? Candace asked. Then those treasures can be uttered to have been lost for the sake of love. Felix coughed. Is there any greater purpose? You are really something special. Candace rolled her eyes at him. 1569 Mining the Nuxino's ingots. A few days later. Upon the desolate surface of planet Vorkara, winds howl across barren landscapes, carrying whispers of ancient secrets and untold riches buried deep within its crust. Felix could be seen emerging from a void rift with the Darkins, Nimmo, and Candace. At a short distance over the horizon, an astronomical mountain was protruding proudly, having its summit completely hidden in clouds. There was a giant cave at the bottom of the mountain with a small overpopulated town, packed with mercenaries and fighters from all races. Let's go. Felix stepped once into the air and he appeared instantly in front of the cave without causing an ounce of disturbance. The mine is closed for maintenance, everyone out. Felix sent this message into everyone's minds, using a mental ability to tamper with them. His spiritual prowess was so ahead, that he didn't even need to utilize his illusion abilities to control someone mentally. Confusion sets in among the mercenaries. Their mission was clear, but the sight before them contradicted their expectations. They exchanged glances, trying to make sense of the information. Another checked their device for any missed communications about this unexpected closure. How weird, the mine is never closed for maintenance. Whatever, I needed to take a break anyway. Damn, I have just arrived yesterday. I guess this is a hint to not get greedy and bail off with a few ingots in my possession. But in the end, they still listened to the mental command as they couldn't go against it. This will make it easier to mine the ingots without getting interrupted. Felix said while watching the mercenaries leaving the mine in waves. Selfie, how is it going? He asked. In the depths of Vorkara's perilous mines, a fierce battle unfolds, casting a stark contrast between the dark, subterranean world and the flashes of combat. Selfie, Noah, Bodadai, and Olivia found themselves pitted against the Nuxino's guardians. These guardians, resembling colossal centipedes, were a nightmarish sight. Their massive bodies, segmented and writhing, were covered in shells as hard as the Nuxino ingots themselves, reflecting the dim light of the miners' lanterns with a menacing sheen. Their powerful jaws snap and clack, capable of crushing stone and bone alike, while their innate ability to manipulate the earth element made them masters of their subterranean domain. However, before Felix's squad, their menacing dread was no use. Selfie easily froze them in time with her time spells while Bodadai sliced them off with spatial blades. As for Noah, he froze them with absolute zero before following it with an ice pillar straight into their brain. Olivia was responsible for watching their back and mining the Nuxino's ingots by using an army of her plant-based summons. It's going well. Selfie asked, have you arrived? I am at the cave's entrance. Are there too many Nuxino's guardians? Their numbers are kind of infinite. Selfie replied with a solemn tone, "We have killed more than 1,000 ever since we stepped in the mine, and the deeper we go, the larger their numbers get." "I see." Felix thought about it for a moment before requesting, "You can come out. Bring with you one of the corpses." Without asking too many questions, Selfie relayed the news to the others. They cancelled their abilities and went through a spatial portal, connecting to the cave's mouth. Their sudden emergence had raised some chatter from the mercenaries, but Felix handled it easily by using his mind control again. "How much did you mine?" Felix inquired. "Not a lot, most of the bars are deep underground." Olivia answered while showing Felix a couple of small dirty golden rocks on her palms. "That's where the centipede's nest is believed to exist. We didn't want to rush there." Selfie added. "Good call." Felix remarked calmly, "Let me handle them." There was no way Felix was going to waste his time mining those bars personally, he had much more important matters to settle. The easiest way to mine those ingots without needing to enter the mine was by cleansing it entirely from those centipedes. Thus, Felix extended his hand and touched the corpse of the fallen guardian. At his touch, a subtle mark glowed briefly on the creature's shell, a sigil that pulsated with a dark energy. With the mark set, Felix began an extraordinary transformation. His arm started to expand and grow, its size magnifying until it matched the vastness of the cavernous space around him. From his enlarged arm, Felix releases a dense, crimson mist. Unlike any ordinary vapor, this destruction mist was imbued with a singular purpose, to seek and eradicate the Nuxino's guardians. As it billowed out from his arm, it filled the mine, creeping into every crevice, every tunnel, spreading hundreds of kilometers through the underground labyrinth. "What the hell is this? Run!" The mercenaries still within, witnessing this eerie and otherworldly phenomenon, felt a primal urge to flee. As the crimson mist enveloped the area, they scrambled towards the exit, a unanimous decision born of survival instinct even though the mist did nothing to them. Meanwhile, the crimson mist found its way to the deepest recesses, where the heart of the guardian's nest lies. There, the mother of the centipedes, a creature of immense size and power, also fell victim to Felix's sinister creation. The mist, like a silent assassin, extinguished her life force, ensuring the end of the centipede lineage and terror over this planet. A few moments later, Felix opened his eyes and uttered calmly, "It's done, all protectors have been erased." The scene was one of calculated efficiency and ruthless intent. As the crimson mist began to evaporate through the caverns, a palpable sense of awe and disbelief gripped Selfie, Noah, Bodadi, and Olivia. They stood frozen, their eyes wide as they witnessed the surreal display of Felix's power. They knew that Felix was powerful beyond measure, but still, to see it with their own eyes after such a long time was something else. Yet, Felix wasn't close to being done. Whoosh! With a sweep of his arms, Felix began to channel his gemstone elemental powers. Slowly, the ground began to tremble, and from the very rocks and crystals of the cavern walls, figures started to emerge. One by one, crystallized miners, sculpted from the minerals of Vorkara itself, rose to stand before Felix. Each miner was equipped with a pickaxe, their crystalline blades honed to perfection. Carts, also crafted from the same sparkling crystal, materialized beside them, ready to carry the mined Nuxino ingots. Other tools, from shovels to drills, all shimmering with an inner light, appear in the hands of the crystal miners, creating an arsenal fit for the task ahead. The crystal miners, a manifestation of Felix's will and power, stand in silent ranks, awaiting his command. Go! With a simple gesture, he set them to work. In a couple of minutes, the crystal miners' army moved as one, their pickaxes striking the rock with precision and strength. The sound of their labor echoes through the caverns, a symphony of progress and power. "Why are we even here?" Bodadi murmured speechlessly. "You can help out with the mining." Felix gave him a side glance. "They are tireless workers but a bit dumb and need guidance." "I will handle it," Olivia volunteered with a chirpy tone. Selphie and Noah also decided to join in and continue extracting the ingots, wanting to help out Felix in any shape or form within their powers. After they set out, Felix eyed the bits of bars in his hand given to him by Olivia and frowned deeply. Even with my efforts, it will take a long while to collect the necessary elemental minerals. Unlike natural treasures, elemental minerals weren't as numbered since they could only be mined. There was no crossbreeding or flesh-based minerals or such, just gemstones, metals, rocks, and such minerals. Even with Miriam's assistance in getting decent quantities from the Dwarven Empire, it was not enough to satisfy him. You should check with the primogenitors, Thor suggested. We have been living for far too long and our empires have harvested a significant amount of the rarest minerals ever created. I believe most of my peers still hold onto them in their treasures after Cyclope retired from forgery. I already thought about doing this with natural treasures too. But, to get something, you have to offer something. Felix knitted his eyebrows deeply. What do I have to offer to move the primogenitors into giving me their everything? In less than a split second, Felix's eyes widened as it clicked in his mind at last that he possessed the one thing that all primogenitors desired but couldn't obtain. You sneaky devil, you will bankrupt them while at the same time making their lives hell. Thor chuckled. Are you sure about it? Why not? I am already being generous by not gunning for their purities. Felix smirked. Plus, it's their lifelong purpose. Not my fault if they didn't like the truth. 1570 An emergency meeting. It was clear to all that Felix was planning to use the primogenitor's humiliating purpose in life as a bargain. It's not going to be easy though. Lord Loki remarked causally, all the elemental lords have made a pact to keep this to ourselves, and while Osiris, Quetzalcoatl, Shiva, and cows wouldn't care about you sharing it, Murdoch won't be too welcoming. It's true. Lord Shiva supported with an irritated tone, that geezer is too stubborn and cares about his face a great deal. He won't allow you to share it since you will need to provide context and we all know how bad it makes the elemental lords look, especially him. I see. Felix knitted his eyebrows thoughtfully. He understood that if the primogenitors were to ever hear that the elemental lords were planning to eradicate the entire universe without even informing them about it, they wouldn't be too happy about it. Plus, the fact that their purpose in life was humiliating enough to set their hearts ablaze wasn't going to make their reaction any better. Additionally, you have to understand that the primogenitors are being peaceful only because they have nothing else to do. Lord Loki added, if they were to ever know about their purpose, there is a great chance of them venting their rage on anything in their path. I know. Felix nodded. This was one of the many reasons Felix and the tenants decided to keep the news to themselves, knowing that nothing good would come out of it. However, the present day was different. Felix smiled coldly. I am strong enough to put them in their place if they decided to act nuts in my alliance. In fact, I will be pleased if they went for it. Felix had no plans to pick a fight with primogenitors, but if some of them went out of line and wanted to flaunt their strength without caring about the civilians' well-being, then he would gladly accept the free purities. Gone were the days when he was afraid of them. Gone were the days when he would avoid giving them the wrong look. Geez, you really are out for blood. Thor chuckled. Felix, just because your spiritual pressure is higher than enough, it doesn't mean that you should underestimate them. Ramongander warned, spiritual pressure is only useful if it is utilized. In other words, if he got too cocky, he wouldn't know when or where he got hit before he could defend himself. Felix nodded in understanding. So, how are you planning to play this? Fenrir inquired expressionlessly. I believe Master Sphinx should set up an emergency meeting in the council. Felix suggested, if she used their purpose in life as the bait, I think the majority of active primogenitors will respond to it. All primogenitors desired to know their purpose in life and it was one of the few remaining musts on their bucket list, so, it was guaranteed to fill the entire council. Lord Hindu God of Destruction will come with us since this entire situation is related to him, Felix said while glancing at Lord Shiva's expression turning into irritation. He clearly wasn't a fan of his plan as he didn't like to be bothered. Don't give us that look, you have to come. Thor incentivized with a faint snigger. Aren't you interested in seeing Lord Murdoch's reaction when his face gets put on trial before us? Lord Shiva's frown was turned upside down at the sound of that, which was enough for a confirmation of his attendance. Lord Kaus, your attendance will be greatly valued too. Felix requested while staring into the sky. I will be there. An emotionless rumble resounded in the consciousness space. Much appreciated. Felix smiled. Felix wanted as many allies as possible behind his back in the council to bolster his presence even more. Some time later, the plan was perfected with caution and thought about many things, knowing that things were mostly going to get intense in the council after dropping such a nuke. 3 days later. In the vast expanse of the universe, most of the primogenitors received Lady Sphinx's emergency meeting invitation through their AP bracelets or other methods. They were scattered across galaxies and dimensions, and the message reached them all simultaneously, causing a ripple of shock and astonishment among them. My fellow primogenitors, I have uncovered the long-awaited purpose of our existence. Gather immediately for an emergency meeting. It was short and straight to the point, making everyone understand that she wasn't messing about. In the fiery heart of a distant star, Phoenix yawned lazily, her golden feathers shimmering with ethereal flames. She read the message, her eyes flickering with mild curiosity. Well, what's this? She mumbled, stretching her wings before answering the call. She had just woke up a couple of years ago from a slumber that lasted eons. She had no clue about what was going on in the universe and neither did she care to know. But, this was different. Meanwhile, above a deserted moon with 2 massive white stars in the background, Lord Marduk sat before a colossal monolith, which was inscribed with the Universal Codex. This monolith had nothing to do with the monoliths Lady Sphinx was collecting, he created it and engraved all the inscriptions of each primogenitor on it. The monolith, towering and enigmatic, was still an unsolvable puzzle that had consumed Marduk's attention for eons. As he deciphered the intricate patterns, his fingers tracing the age-old inscriptions, a ripple of energy disturbs the tranquility of his surroundings. A communication from Lady Sphinx, an emergency meeting invitation, materialized before him. The message, imbued with a sense of urgency and importance, spoke of revealing the purpose of their birth, a secret as old as time itself. Lord Marduk paused, his eyes lifting from the monolith to the floating message. Sphinx, how did you find out? No, even if you found it, you are intelligent enough to understand that such news can't be shared. Lord Marduk narrowed his eyes, something isn't right here. Without wasting time on empty speculation, Lord Marduk reached out to Lady Sphinx. It rang twice before the call was picked up. Sphinx, what's the meaning of this? Lord Marduk asked expressionlessly. If you want to understand everything, feel free to join us in the meeting. Lady Sphinx replied calmly before giving him a polite head nod. Then, she hung up the call, having no desire to listen to his attempts to prevent her from doing this. With a deep, contemplative sigh, Lord Marduk stood up, his towering humanoid form casting a long shadow across the monolith. As he prepared to leave, Lord Marduk took one last look at the monolith, a silent promise to return to his quest for knowledge, but for now, the call from Lady Sphinx held a much more serious problem. I have no idea who told her or if she even knew the real truth, but I can't have her blabber about what happened. Lord Marduk remarked coldly. In the grand chamber of the Primogenitors' Council, located in the UVR, a tumult of voices filled the air. Each primogenitor contributed to the cacophony of voices as they discussed the impending revelation promised by Lady Sphinx. Erebus, the embodiment of shadow, conversed in hushed tones with Siren, sticking close to his crush akin to glue. Nearby, Cyclops Singular, piercing eye scanned the room, engaging in a visual dialogue with Jorogamo, whose form shifted subtly between that of a spider and a woman. Akli, her presence a mere foggy wisp, whispered into the ear of Lord Quetzalcoatl, whose voice was loud enough that it echoed across the hall. Even the breathtaking Lady Phoenix could be seen yawning at the corner while being surrounded by a couple of primogenitors. Some were updating her on some of the important events that happened during her slumber, while some, like the magma primogenitor sheriff, were hitting on her on the low. The chamber buzzed with theories, questions, and speculations, a symphony of voices representing the vast spectrum of the universe. Yet, there was a different conversation ongoing between the attending elemental lords and Felix's masters. As I thought, your boy can't sit tight without creating trouble, haha. Lord Feathered Serpent Deity laughed, knowing that it must be Felix's idea. After all, elemental lords still cared about their promise and they wouldn't break the agreement they made with each other. He is doing this for a legit reason. Thor coughed, totally unrelated to his greed. Sure, haha, where is he though? Lord Feathered Serpent Deity asked, is he planning to make a dramatic entrance? How fun! Dramatic? Well, you can say that. Thor chuckled with the rest of the tenants as he eyed the restless demonized Darkins. This is the worst day of my life. Just shut down those thoughts, they won't do us any good. We knew this was happening ever since we accepted the enslavement. The Darkins could be seen sighing with a tint of hopelessness and humiliation in their eyes, not able to imagine their peers' reactions once they saw them. Chapter 1571 An Emergency Meeting 2. As the discussion reached a crescendo, a notable change swept over the chamber. Lord Marduk, the embodiment of cosmic authority and considered the most powerful primogenitor after the death of Lord Shiva, had made his entrance. His overbearing presence commanded immediate attention, a testament to his stature among the primogenitors. The voices gradually diminish, not out of fear, but respect, an acknowledgement of Lord Marduk's wisdom and leadership. It's good to see you again, Lord Marduk. C Omicron M. It's been a while. Is there any advancement in deciphering the inscriptions? It will be an honor to listen to one of your lectures. No one showed him an ounce of disrespect, knowing that he was the only one solely focusing on their mysterious inscriptions. Since it was believed that those inscriptions held countless techniques in them, like the elemental conversion technique, everyone wanted to be on his good side for the sake of receiving them someday. I am not here to talk about the inscriptions. Lord Marduk responded indifferently while walking towards Lady Sphinx and the rest of Felix's masters. Who blabbered? He asked her. Looks like he believes that one of the elemental lords broke the pact. Thor said. Only the ones with context understood him, whilst the rest were left turning their heads left and right in puzzlement. It's an old friend of yours. Lady Sphinx answered composedly. Hey? It can. Before Lord Marduk could react, a sudden and inexplicable alter permeated the air, a hush fell over the council, a silence so profound it seemed to echo through the cosmos. From the very fabric of space within the chamber, a figure emerged, commanding and serene Lord Shiva. His entrance was both majestic and enigmatic, defying the laws of reality and existence. Almost all the council members were left stunned into speechlessness. Eyes widen in disbelief and awe as they behold the figure of Lord Shiva, whose presence was relegated to a forgotten legend and memory. The air around him shimmered with otherworldly energy, and a faint aura of cosmic dust trailed his movements, a reminder of the cataclysm he was once part of. The only peculiar thing that broke this enigmatic scene was the fact he was holding into a colorful cartoonish manga book in one of his forehands while wearing sunglasses and a tropical outfit. He resembled an old retired man spending a vacation in Hawaii or Maldives. Sup losers? Lord Shiva greeted him politely, not giving a sh*t about anyone's reaction. Lord Marduk, a being seldom surprised, pauses mid-sentence, his usual composure momentarily unsettled. Shiva, how? The sight of Shiva, a peer long mourned and revered, stirred a rare flicker of emotion in his ageless eyes. Marduk, time sure has done some damage on you. No wait, you always looked this **tty. Lord Shiva sneered while stepping in front of him. What the hell is going on here? Erebus exclaimed under his breath whilst leaning closer to Siren's ear, taking advantage of the situation to get a sniff of her. How would I know? We were told Shiva died imploding his soul, so how can he be here? Siren murmured in confusion while pushing Erebus' creepy face away from her. Kumiho, Aspidikelone, Jorgamo, and the rest of the primogenitors were just as clueless about this situation. I am not in the mood to explain anything to anyone. I am above you, before and now. Lord Shiva remarked egotistically whilst sitting next to Lady Sphinx and putting one leg above the other on the platform in front, then, he lowered his sunglasses and opened his manga book without a care in the world. Lord Marduk's fists tightened in anger at his nonchalant attitude after what happened before them. But, before he could force Lord Shiva to engage with him, another unforeseen development unfolded, further intensifying the atmosphere of astonishment. The air in the chamber, already thick with cosmic energy, shivered with a new, darker intensity. A portal, swirling with shadows and ominous energy, materialized at the far end of the hall. From this portal stepped Felix, his presence a stark contrast to the ethereal beings of the council. He exuded a sense of demonic power and evil, his eyes alighted with an enigmatic purpose. Behind Felix, emerging from the same shadowy portal, were Darkins and Elder Kraken. Darkins, now bearing a more demonized appearance, their forms twisted and formidable, radiate an aura of menace and strength. Yet, they had their heads lowered in obedience and shame as they walked toward the center of the wall amidst the prying eyes of their peers. Meanwhile Elder Kraken was walking with a wide kind smile, waving his hand left and right in greetings. The council, still processing the return of Lord Shiva, found themselves facing yet another shock. The appearance of Felix and Elder Kraken, all believed to be lost to the annals of time, added another layer of disbelief and awe to the gathering. As for the Darkins, none of them would have imagined a day when they would be seen walking behind Felix subserviently. No, seriously, what the **ck is going on? In the end, Erebus couldn't handle it and exploded in a thunderous stupefied exclamation. Landlord is still alive? Elder Kraken too? Is this the day of revival? Is Loki messing with us and has put us in an illusionary domain? Without hesitation, everybody turned to Lord Loki and Lord Quetzalcoatl, having a strong belief that one of those two had a hand in this. Don't look at me, I am just as clueless as you. Lord Quetzalcoatl acted innocent, not wanting to be associated with any of this. I am not that bored. Lord Loki murmured to himself, though it's a great prank, I should have thought about it before. Seeing those two were as useless as always, everyone's focus was brought back to Felix. Greetings elders, it's been a while. Felix greeted respectfully without bowing his head this time. The primogenitors noticed the unshakable confidence in his eyes and lack of fear from them, which had never been the case before. Still, no one bothered to address such a matter when there were 3 revived people amidst them. Little cutie, mind explaining this situation? Are you the one who wanted this meeting to happen? Were you even dead? And what's the deal with those 2-faced dogs behind you? Kumiho fired a series of questions with a deadly charming look. The primogenitors, their attention now fully on him, waited with bated breath as he prepared to speak. His voice, when it finally broke the silence, carried a calm certainty like what he talking about was a Tuesday afternoon. I, once dead and now revived, have enslaved the Darkins in retribution, and it is I who have orchestrated this council, not to herald my return, but to offer the truth of your existence, obliviously, for a price. In this single, loaded sentence, Felix unveiled the depths of his journey and intent. His revelation of death and resurrection painted a picture of a being who has traversed the boundaries of life itself. Meanwhile, the enslavement of the Darkins spoke to a tale of vengeance and power, a testament to his resolve and strength. Most intriguingly, Felix claimed responsibility for convening the council and offered to reveal the purpose of their existence. A single sentence was enough to let everybody understand close to the full picture, and most importantly, that Felix wasn't here to muck around. The hall fell into a deeper silence, the magnitude of Felix's statements hanging in the air. Even with all of this attention on him from the most powerful beings in the universe, Felix felt like he was being watched by mere mortals. A feeling he never thought he would experience in this room so soon. 1572 An Emergency Meeting 3. Who is this kid? Why are Sorrow and Winnie giving off a weird vibe? Suddenly, the silence was broken by Lady Phoenix's questions. She sounded genuinely curious after watching everyone's bizarre reaction to his statements. She didn't even believe the notion that Felix had enslaved the Darkins, and many other primogenitors in the council also refused to accept this reality. Sadly, the sight of Saurus and Wendigo lowering their heads in utter silence in their demonized forms didn't help their decision much. It's a pleasure to meet you, Lady Phoenix. Felix introduced himself politely. I am Felix Maxwell, a member of the Asgardian faction and the previous supreme leader of the SG Alliance. Nice to meet you too. Lady Phoenix asked again with a tint of wonder, did you really enslave those two? Was I asleep for too long that non-primogenitors have overtaken us? She didn't seem pissed or ashamed at the notion of her peers being enslaved. She was merely puzzled about how could it happen in the first place. I knew that little kid has gotten dangerously powerful to kill us, but enslave us. Erebus frowned. There is no way the Darkins will allow this to happen, even if they experienced the worst kind of pain for billions of years. They have gotten demonized. Does this mean the Asgardian's son has become a demon too at the level of Lucifer? Elder Aspidicalone thought to himself. He wanted to reach out to Felix's masters and get the full picture, but he knew that they wouldn't be telling him anything. The rest of the attendants' ears perked up, desiring a full explanation too. The only reason most of them didn't seem outraged or bothered with the notion of their peers being enslaved was because the Darkins had already fell out with them. If Felix enslaved Lady Yggdrasil, Elder Aspidicalone, or another decent and neutral primogenitor, he would receive a totally different reaction. My apologies, but I am not here to discuss anything else besides the purpose of this meeting. Unfortunately for them, Felix refused to dive deeper into this situation. Just as he wanted to steer the conversation back to the main subject, Lord Marduk spoke with a rough, stern voice. Kid, you can't just enslave primogenitors and skim over it, explain yourself. Lord Marduk was already not too pleased with Felix acting brazenly ever since he stepped into the council. Then, he said he wanted to sell the damning information without respecting his presence. Now, he was arrogant enough to dismiss a primogenitor's question when it was related to their peers. He wasn't having it at all. You want an explanation? Sure. Felix shrugged his shoulders as he ordered the Darkins, speak. The Darkins lifted their heads and looked at everyone with hollow eyes, voided of any pride, honor, or life. The only emotion reflected in them was shame. We have chosen him as our master willingly, everyone should mind their business. What he said. The Darkins also didn't bother explaining how they became like this and simply directly shut down anyone's attempts to help them out. They knew of Felix's strength more than anyone, and they feared their fate if they showed just a tiny bit of dissatisfaction by being around Felix. You heard them. Felix disclosed calmly, now, can we take our seats and discuss the truth about your existence? I know that this has been a lifetime goal for most of you. Although Lord Marduk and the rest knew that those two were saying this against their will, none of them wanted to remain on the subject anymore. Being shut down once was enough. Kid, don't do this. You know that spreading such news might cause the downfall of the universe, is that what you want to see? Lord Marduk warned telepathically. Nothing of such sort will happen. Felix replied calmly, and if it did? I have it covered. Have it covered. Lord Marduk's tone grew colder. Boy, you have been acting too mighty and disrespectful for a while now. I was patient enough to excuse your attitude, but if you think that being able to defeat the Darkins is enough to class you above us, you will be in a world of pain. Now, listen to me, take that suicidal lunatic and your masters, and leave this place at once while I am still asking nicely." Lord Marduk concluded with a bit of his authoritative spiritual aura released. "I won't repeat it again." Felix sensed his overbearing aura encompass him, but he didn't bother to defend against it or overpower it with his spiritual pressure. He simply affixed his indifferent look at Lord Marduk for a moment before opening his mouth. "Lord Marduk, I tell you right now that you don't scare me at all. If you are interested in making a better deal with me, then I will gladly accept it and leave this place. If not, I am afraid everyone here will learn the truth." After being put in this situation, Felix came up with a plan to take advantage of Lord Marduk's unique creation powers. In his eyes, why bother exploring the universe for new SSS natural treasures when he could crossbreed new ones with his illusion domain and use Lord Marduk's creation domain to bring them to reality? Since Felix wasn't immune to creation elements, it meant he would be able to utilize anything created from said element. It was a much more reliable plan than his current one, which depended heavily on luck. Plus, if Lord Marduk threw one or two new techniques, then he wouldn't be complaining at all. Lord Marduk turned to Felix's masters when he realized that threats weren't working on Felix. "Are you guys approving of this? You do understand that I am a man of my word, and if I said your little boy is going to regret this, I won't go back on it," he said while staring at Lady Sphinx and Elder Kraken specifically. He respected them more than even some elemental lords due to their research results and the value they provided over the years compared to many other primogenitors. "Alas! Lord Marduk, this is between you and him." Lady Sphinx shook her head. "Whatever happens, I won't hold it against you. I am just here to catch up with old friends." Elder Kraken smiled kindly while sitting next to some of his old pals. "Please, don't bring me into this. Lord Marduk, I suggest you consider making a deal with him." Thor mentioned with a serious tone, "Our enemies are one and he is trying his best to finish what you started. Actually, it will be much easier if we have you on our side as we need all the help possible to enter the Eternal Kingdom." Hormungandr supported. Fenrir nodded silently. "Marduk, don't be such a stubborn bull." Lord Loki joined in with a solemn tone unlike his usual demeanor. "First, everyone deserves to know the truth, and secondly, the little demon actually has the biggest chance to bring some hell to those Eternal Kingdom scum. You know that no one else hates them more than me. Marduk, you know that I don't like nonsense." Lord Kaus added emotionlessly, "In this situation, you are either with us or against us." On the other hand, Lord Shiva merely gave him a middle finger without bothering to lift his head from his book. Each of Felix's masters and tenants reached out to Lord Marduk in their own ways to convince him to take Felix's side. After all, the enemy of my enemy is a friend. Lord Marduk might care about his face a great deal, but he also desired the fall of the Eternal Kingdom just like them. If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't have attempted to erase the universe with his peers. When Lord Marduk saw that so many of his close friends were on Felix's side and that his end goal was the destruction of the Eternal Kingdom, he remained silent for a while. He turned to Felix and stared directly into his eyes. Felix remained composed and silent too, having no interest in begging anyone anymore. If he wanted to join the cause, then great, he was more than welcome. If not and he desired to become his enemy for real, then it was also great. He could dominate Felix after defeating him and getting all the advantages of having a creation ancestor under his payroll. As for being scared of him? Hell, Felix was about to confront an actual Unigen. If he got scared by a primogenitor, he should reconsider his battle with Nemo's alter ego. "Your eyes, you are a strange little child. Do you really accept you can take me down? You genuinely believe it from the bottom of your heart?" Lord Marduk remarked with an interested tone. "Yes." Felix calmly replied without an ounce of hesitation. "Ha ha, ha 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 ha, ha 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 ha." Lord Marduk roared in laughter, causing all to raise their eyebrows in surprise at his sudden outburst. Before they could understand what was happening, Elder Marduk placed his hands on Felix's shoulders and uttered with a sinister smile, "Fine, little one, You want a deal? Felix will decide when I see what you are capable of. Meet me at this location in a month, don't be late. 1573. Sometimes my genius is almost frightening. Lord Marduk forwarded the location's information to Felix and left the meeting without bothering to explain anything to his peers. Felix glanced at the location details for a few moments before he lifted his head and looked around him. Almost everyone was giving him curious or bewildered looks, knowing that those two must have a telepathic discussion, which ended in some sort of a battle. My apologies, there is a change of plans, Felix informed with a composed expression while sharing the location's details. There was a difference between me and Lord Marduk that needs to be solved in person. If you want to learn the truth about your purpose in life, join us. Also, the price is all the natural treasures and elemental minerals in your treasury. Please don't play games, you are above it. Felix nodded his head politely and excused himself, until we meet again. He left with the Darkins and some of the tenants. Elder Kraken, Thor, and Hormungandr remained behind. Elder Kraken wanted to catch up with his pals while those two stayed behind for one reason. Their demeanor was marked by smug confidence, a stark contrast to the solemnity and tension that pervaded the room. Sheesh, it sure wasn't easy to teach such a remarkable genius with infinite potential. I say this was much harder than even creating an ultimate ability. Don't you think so? I wholeheartedly agree, Brother Thor. Hormungandr played along with a deep sigh. Who would have thought we would create a monster capable of standing up to Lord Marduk in less than 2 centuries? Sometimes my genius is almost frightening. The chamber, usually a place of composed discourse and ancient wisdom, was filled with the boisterous tones of Thor and Hormungandr. Their bragging, laced with an unmistakable sense of pride, echoes off the cosmic walls, filling the space with a narrative of mentorship and triumph. Around them, the other primogenitors listened, their expressions ranging from vexation to annoyance. Eyelids twitch in barely concealed irritation and incredulity as they process the duo's shameless patting on the back. The worst part? None wanted to interrupt them, knowing that many of them had doubted, mocked, and laughed at them after hearing about their decision to teach a human. Now that Felix was at the top of the ladder and in control of the whole narrative, the time to shut down the doubters was finally here, and those two were too petty and prideful to leave it be. No wonder Fenrir and Lady Sphinx left swiftly. Assholes, we are really not in the mood to listen to your boasts. Sheriff cursed in irritation while huffing smoke out of his nostrils. You brought us here, teased us with the truth, and decided to gather us in the real world? Isn't your precious student getting a bit too cocky? Don't blame our student, blame it on Lord Marduk. Thor sneered. It's clear he is the one who interrupted this meeting, or are you too scared to offend him? Sheriff got pissed off immediately at being called out. He is right, Sheriff. Something is weird going on between Lord Marduk and Lord Shiva. I believe it is related to the reality of our existence. Siren mentioned with an angelic voice. Everyone knew that if Lord Marduk had no clue about their purpose, he wouldn't have caused such a scene and would have listened patiently like them. I think all lords are on this. Erebus remarked coldly. They all followed after the kid, Lord Marduk, and Lord Shiva. Somehow our meaning must be tied to the conflict between Lord Shiva and the lords. Who knows, they might have wanted to eliminate him after realizing he was planning to share it with us. You are saying the lords know about our purpose and have been hiding it all this while? Kumiho's charming smile was nowhere to be seen. If such a heavy accusation was proved right, it was enough to set everyone's hearts ablaze in anger. Who could blame them? They had all said that whoever found the reality of their purpose in this universe must share it with the rest. It was a right above conflict, schemes, grudges, and everything else. Let's not rush to wild assumptions. Elder Aspidikalone asked Felix's masters, brothers, I know that you have the same information as your student. So, please ease our confusion. Sorry guys, but you have heard Felix. Thor shook his head. In a month, you will get your truth, just bring your payment and prepare yourself mentally for it, that's all I can tell you at the moment. Knowing that this half-assed answer wasn't going to satisfy them, Thor and Hormungandr decided to take a hike at last, not wanting to get grilled with questions. After they left, everyone turned to Elder Kraken. I guess this is my cue. It was nice to see you again guys, and let's catch up later on. Without an ounce of hesitation, he left the council hall. The primogenitors remained staring at each other with a mixture of emotions, mostly negative. One by one, they said their goodbyes and exited the council, wanting to prepare for the journey. After a few moments, only Cyclope and Lady Yggdrasil were left behind, sitting at the far corners of the hall. You know. Yes. Both of them smiled bitterly. Unlike the others, those two had a closer relationship with Felix and knew many of his secrets even if they didn't have their awareness spark inside his mind. How did you feel when you first heard about it? Cyclope asked. A bit bothered, but I have accepted it. Lady Yggdrasil smiled. I understood that this is just life. We create and we get created. As for the purpose? I have lived mine to the fullest and I accept no other meaning but it. I am glad we share the same mentality. Cyclope chuckled. I loved every moment of my forging journey, and if it brought some sort of enjoyment to those beings, so what? It didn't affect my life at all. I kinda wish the others would have the same reaction, alas. Lady Yggdrasil shook her head. Both of them understood that it wasn't going to be easy for the others to accept their purpose, unlike them who found passion in their divine/runic inscriptions and ignored everything else, the rest had nothing much going on in their lives. They had done everything that needed to be done and now they were merely wasting their years away in boredom. If they were ever to hear that their entire life was a mere experiment to entertain the beings in the Eternal Kingdom, it would shatter most of them. What do you think that boy is up to? Cyclope inquired with a solemn tone. He even offended Lord Marduk in the process. I don't know the full picture, but he aiming for an unbelievable challenge and requires all the help possible to get stronger. Lady Yggdrasil answered. What's more unbelievable than Lord Marduk? Cyclope frowned. Don't tell me he is trying to target a Unigen. I believe so. Lady Yggdrasil validated it. Has he lost his mind or does he have something to rely on? I guess we will find out during his fight with Lord Marduk. Lady Yggdrasil remarked. I genuinely don't know how he will win against him. Cyclope shook his head, even Lord Shiva would be put in a binder. I think so too, Lord Marduk is the perfect all-rounded primogenitor with no weaknesses. Lady Yggdrasil suddenly smiled, yet, I somehow feel like we will be in for a surprise. Well, that boy is known for making miracles. Elder Cyclope said with a wistful look, I really hope that he uses my masterpiece, the Cosmos Breaker, to win the battle. In Elder Cyclope's eyes, if Felix won with his masterpiece, then, he could proudly claim universal-wide that he had forged the greatest divine weapon of all time. No one could take it from him for generations to come. 1574 The Gathering of the Deities. Meanwhile in Felix's consciousness space. I guess it turned out better than we expected, Felix remarked calmly while sitting at the central table with the tenants. It will be better only if you win. Lady Sphinx warned, Lord Marduk isn't an easy opponent in the slightest, he is extremely intelligent and possesses a strategic mind like no other. Felix nodded with a solemn expression. To be the only primogenitor capable of deciphering the Universal Codex inscriptions, it was a no-brainer that Lord Marduk's intelligence was on a different level than even Lady Sphinx and Lady Yggdrasil. To make matters worse, he wasn't a pacifist who purely focused on research, he was smart and powerful enough to make all primogenitors respect his will. Lord Shiva, have you ever fought against him besides that one time? Felix asked, wanting to obtain more information to help his preparation. Beings at our level don't fight for fun, we fight once and that's it. Lord Shiva answered indifferently, so no, we have never clashed directly during the primogenitor's era. I see. But, I can tell you this for free. Lord Shiva added with a serious tone, boy, if you want to win your battle, you will have only one chance, and that's freezing him with your spiritual pressure. Failing to do so means he will either win or the fight will never end. There is no other outcome besides those three. While Lord Shiva didn't clarify much, it was obvious that he didn't believe himself to have what it takes to kill Lord Marduk. Sure, he was the destruction primogenitor and possessed the most powerful abilities in the universe, but when dealing with the creation primogenitor, the battle would always end evenly between them unless one of them made a fatal mistake, which was impossible. The only reason Lord Shiva was believed to be the strongest primogenitor in his time was due to his absolute menacing terror. In reality, those two were opposite faces of the same coin. However, Felix had something that none of them possessed, a higher spiritual pressure, which was a game-changer in such close battles. I also believe the same. Felix affirmed in agreement. He possesses unknown creation abilities and creation domain, which turns him into an unkillable god. I have to take advantage of his lack of information about my spiritual pressure to defeat him in the first second of the battle. Everyone supported his plan. It was simple, direct, but most effective. When fighting against highly intelligent opponents, complex strategies would be less reliable than direct approaches. Still, just because you have chosen a direct approach, it doesn't mean that you jump him barbarically. Lady Sphinx advised, he is like a chess master who is always 100 times steps ahead of you, and if you made your motive obvious of getting close to him, he will make sure to keep his distance even if he had no idea about your spiritual pressure. I will see what I can do. Felix comprehended that spiritual pressure was a killer move, but it had a fatal weakness of being obvious and slow. In other words, while he could push his spiritual pressure to cover millions of kilometers, it would be utterly useless if it caught no one. That's why he had to be extremely close to Lord Marduk before releasing it, giving him almost no time to react against it like he did to the Darkans. You have been given a month to reach the location, but I think it's best if you make your move right now. Thor mentioned with a stern tone, you can't give him an entire month on the battlefield, God knows how large his creation domain will be by the time you arrive. Felix affirmed in agreement and requested Lord Kaus to help him teleport there after informing his squad that he would leave for a while. As for the mind-controlled mercenaries, they would stay like that regardless of the distance until he cancelled his mental control or died, just like his army of crystal miners. In the vast emptiness of space, far from the bustling life of galaxies and nebulae, Felix arrived at a location destined to become a historic battleground between the new destruction god and the current creation god. The setting was stark yet majestic, an enormous, desolate expanse where the laws of physics seemed to hang in a delicate balance. Before him loomed a planet, colossal in scale, 5 times the size of Jupiter, adorned with a massive ring that glittered with stardust and cosmic debris. The ring cast a spectral light, creating a surreal backdrop for the impending confrontation. Nearby, 2 stars whirled in a perilous dance, their proximity was dangerously short. They emitted a fierce light that bathed the area in an unyielding glow. As Felix emerged from the void with the Darkans, Nimmo, and Candace, their arrival was marked by a ripple of energy that disturbed the eerie calm of the space. I guess everyone had the same thought as us. Felix's eyelids twitched after noticing tens of primogenitors exiting from spatial portals, attending from all parts of the universe. This sight didn't surprise him that much, knowing that they must have bought a ticket here from Lord Dune. Unlike other lords, he never minded helping anyone as long as the price was worth the transaction. It's been a while since this many primogenitors had gathered in the real world. Thor commentated with a nostalgic tone as he recalled the last pact he participated in. That was the last time the primogenitors made a gathering before his death. Meanwhile, the primogenitors formed a silent audience, their expressions ranging from impassive to keenly interested. Some stood solitary, lost in their own contemplation of the upcoming battle, while others conversed in hushed tones, their voices a whisper against the backdrop of cosmic winds. Felix took in the scene, his gaze sweeping over the assembled deities, wanting to check if Lord Marduk was around. Unfortunately, he was nowhere to be seen. he even extended his senses to the nearest planet and they didn't pick on any life form. Is this a neutral area? Felix slid his eyes. He didn't give me the location of his home, so the battle will be on fair grounds. This made Felix understand that Lord Marduk was confident in beating him down and didn't want to leave him a single excuse to hide behind when he lost. I see how it is. Felix smiled, not too bothered by this. Meanwhile, the primogenitors comprehended that it was proper etiquette to leave a decent distance from each other unless there was a blind trust between them. So, no one really approached Felix besides Lady Sphinx, Fenrir, Cyclope, and Lady Yggdrasil. Boy, how confident are you to win this? Cyclope inquired while having his forging hammer resting on his shoulders. 50/50. Felix responded genuinely. That's already freakishly high enough, Cyclope exclaimed, I might even bet on you. Bet? Yeah, Erebus has started collecting bets from everyone on the outcome of the battle the instant he exited from the rift. Cyclope ratted out while pointing at Erebus. Is that so? Felix's eyelids twitched as he reached out to Erebus telepathically. What are the bet's terms? Favors, ancient collectibles, and such, the usual. Erebus shared, Kid, you are in the big leagues now, we can allow you to join the bet only if you choose yourself as the winner. If you lost, you better pay up even if a primogenitor used his favor to request the truth from you for free. I know, put me in. Felix participated without hesitation. 1575 A swift opportunistic ambush. He understood that not many primogenitors would bet on him even when he had proved his worth again and again. After all, his opponent was the creation primogenitor, and if even he didn't know how to win against him without his spiritual pressure, how could the others believe in him? Here, take this, it's not much, but I hope it helps you with whatever you are dealing with. Cyclope suddenly removed a ring from his finger and placed it on Felix's palm. When Felix looked inside the ring and saw a 10-kilometer mountain of elemental minerals, shining and glittering like a brilliant star, he was left with no words. Elder, you don't have to. It's just some elemental minerals and I have already retired, so I won't be using them anyway. Cyclope interrupted him with a deep grin, don't reject it, pay me by using my masterpiece in your fight. This, I can't make promises. Felix sighed wryly, knowing that his strategy had no use for his cosmos breaker. That's enough for me. Cyclope chuckled while floating away. Thank you. He murmured. Felix knew that such an amount of elemental minerals would save him years if not decades of painstakingly hard work. Just as he was about to put it in his spatial card, Lady Yggdrasil came forward and patted Felix on the head with a gentle smile. Then, she placed another green ring on his palm. I wish you the best of luck, little one, use this so you won't die again, my daughter can't handle the trauma twice. Felix glanced at the ring and his senses got connected to it immediately, allowing him to look inside of it. The moment he saw the massive 100-kilometer garden of ripe natural treasures in it, his eyes remained frozen in shock. Elder, I can. I don't know why are you still trying your best to become stronger, but whatever it is, I really desire you don't lose yourself in the journey. Lady Yggdrasil advised with a breezy calming voice before leaving his side without the ring, not giving him a chance to return it. As he watched their retreating backs, Felix felt a deep sense of gratitude for everything they had done for him. They may not be his masters or tenants with bloodline relations, but Felix achieved a decision to invite them officially inside his consciousness space after the battle. It might not seem like much, but if Felix ever made it to the Eternal Kingdom, his consciousness space would be the most desirable area in the entire universe. He would be the first outsider to step foot in the land of the gods and everyone would want to see the other side. Let's not think about anything else now. Felix refocused on his upcoming battle. Lord Marduk has given me the perfect opportunity to strike by not being here. I can't miss it. Felix planned on ambushing Lord Marduk the instant he made his presence on the battleground, not giving him even a chance to prepare or talk. It might seem cowardly and opportunistic, but he didn't give a crap. As Felix heightened his senses to the limit, believing that Lord Marduk would appear in the next minutes or hours at least, he was left gravely mistaken. Days went by and then weeks. Yet, Lord Marduk was nowhere to be seen. As the final hours of the deadline ticked away, a sense of uncertainty began to stir among the onlookers. Whispers and murmurs rippled through the ranks of the primogenitors, speculating on Marduk's absence. Felix, however, remained undeterred, his gaze unwavering, his stance resolute. Then, as the last day dawned, heralded by the eerie light of the dangerously close stars, the fabric of space itself began to warp and shiver, signaling the imminent arrival of Lord Marduk. And then, Lord Marduk emerged from a crackling spatial rift, his presence commanding and majestic. His appearance was not rushed or hurried, instead, he carried the aura of timeless authority, a being for whom deadlines were but mere constructs. He surveyed the gathered assembly of primogenitors with a measured gaze, acknowledging their presence with a nod that spoke of his ancient stature. Just as he stepped fully outside of the spatial rift, the vast emptiness of space became the stage for a sudden and electrifying assault. As planned, Felix, calculating and swift, seized the opportunity to gain the upper hand in this monumental confrontation. With tactical brilliance, he transformed himself into a bolt of lightning, a living embodiment of speed and power. Zzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. This transformation was more than a mere spectacle, it was a strategic maneuver much better than teleportation since it remained no spatial disturbance as a giveaway. Felix, now a streak of electrifying energy, cut across the cosmic expanse with a speed that defied perception. The gathered primogenitors, themselves beings of immense power, could barely track his movement as he hurtled towards Marduk. In an instant, Felix materialized beside Marduk, still in his form of pure lightning. The proximity was so sudden, so unexpected, that it caught even the creation primogenitor off guard. Before Lord Marduk could fully orient himself to his surroundings or react to Felix's presence, Felix unleashed his spiritual pressure. Whoosh! The spiritual pressure emanated from Felix in waves, distorting the space around them, a palpable force that even the primogenitors could feel weighing upon them. The instant they sensed its overbearness compared to theirs, they remained utterly stunned. Impossible! It can't be! No wonder! It's a declaration of intent, a statement of Felix's resolve and unyielding confidence. Lord Marduk, momentarily taken aback by the swiftness and audacity of the assault, regained his composure. Alas, it was already too late and his body and soul were already under the grip of Felix's spiritual chains. Felix switched back to his human form and placed his divine cosmos breaker axe's blade on Lord Marduk's furry neck. Checkmate, Felix uttered calmly. Lord Marduk remained silent, unable to speak even if he wanted. Felix had gone all out on his spiritual pressure to make sure he wouldn't turn this around. Meanwhile, the primogenitors gathered to witness the epic confrontation between Felix and Lord Marduk, were frozen in a state of shock. With Felix's swift and strategic assault, the expected clash of cosmic titans was over almost before it began. The scene of Felix, still emanating his spiritual pressure, holding his axe to Marduk's neck, remained the assembled deities in stunned silence. Their reactions slowly turned into murmurs of disbelief and awe. Siren, her voice usually melodious, now carried a note of incredulity. "I knew that boy's confidence won't stem from nothing, but this," she said, trailing off, her gaze fixed on the scene before her. Lord Marduk, the master of creation, was subdued in less than a millisecond. "Is this really happening?" Erebus muttered. "Marduk, have you lost your touch after burying your head in those inscriptions?" Lord Quetzalcoatl shook his head with a wry smile. He already knew about Felix's spiritual pressure, but he still assumed that Lord Marduk would be able to handle it. No wonder he was able to take down the rest of the Darkins and even enslave them. "No one can beat this," Kumiho remarked with a tint of fear in her eyes, knowing profound down that it was almost impossible to handle such a combo. Most of the primogenitors had placed themselves in Lord Marduk's positions and realized that their fates would be sealed as well. Do you surrender? Felix asked indifferently. If it was up to him, he would have demonized Lord Marduk, but there was no way the primogenitors would sit tight and watch this happen, especially the elemental lords. Alas, Lord Marduk wasn't going to make his life easier. Primogenitors don't surrender. Lord Marduk replied casually, you either leave me be or kill me.